Welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, presented by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a podcast devoting to reading the entire infamous 1990s Clone Saga and more, discussing and analyzing along the way. Today we're going to be talking about what is retroactively called the original Clone Saga, and that's composed of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issues 139 to 151. And all of these issues have a publication date ranging from December 1974 to December 1975. So we're talking about a dozen issues, about a full year of Spider-Man. And every single issue here is written by Jerry Conway, except for 151, the very end, which is written by Archie Goodwin. And Ross Andrew pencils every issue except for 150, which is by Gil Kane. There's a whole bunch of inkers, colorists, and letterers, which I'm not going to get into because they differ issue to issue quite a bit. And all of these issues at the time had a cover price of 25 cents. As far as collected editions, I want to real quick go through this because so I'm reading out of this nice thick trade called The Original Clone Saga, and the next episode will also be covering the second half of this or so. There are also, as alternatives, all of these issues are also in Essential Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, which I believe is where Matt has read it.
Yeah, I have it here.
In Marvel Masterworks format, you'd have to jump between 14 and 15. And also, almost the exact same issues we're reading, but with slight differences. There was a 1995 Clone Genesis paperback, which is around the time of the 90s Clone Saga there. So they put that out so that people would get some of these references, which I think, real quick, I think it's interesting that collection was called Clone Genesis. Like, I kind of feel like this storyline could be called Clone Genesis just to distinguish it rather than original Clone Saga, which makes sense, and like it makes it very clear that it's calling back to this, but like it's also a kind of boring name.
Yeah, the name kind of sucks, but it makes sense.
All right. So now getting into the bulk of the episode, one thing I wanted to state off the bat is I talked about a lot of the creator credits. All of the covers for these issues are done by John Romita Sr. and/or Gil Kane, rather than Ross Andrew, which I think is interesting because it establishes like this long-running continuity. Like I think last episode Mike mentioned how like he was surprised by Gil Kane, and because he wasn't totally clear on like when Romita left and everything like that. And so I don't know when they stopped doing that, but on the covers of Spider-Man, like it all kind of seems like it's the same era and the same creators for a long time. But at the same time, Ross Andrew, which we'll get into, he's not a stark transition away from Romita and Kane and them as well, yeah, either. All right. So what we start off with is, I think the first part, we start with 139, and it's a 2-issue story arc. It's the Grizzly. What did you guys think of the Grizzly?
He's awesome. He's got
Nick,
the best costume.
Why is the Grizzly awesome?
Well, mostly from his appearance. Physically, you look at him, you're gonna get threatened by this guy. He's gonna F you up. But
his bear costume.
Yeah, I think it's funny that his head is in the mouth of the bear, so then you have like the bear eyes above it.
Yeah, it's insane. It's the first of 2 or 3 villains that appear in this series of issues that Conway and Andrew really wanted to be cool, yeah, and maybe weren't.
They play it pretty seriously too.
He seems like a discount.
Like that's the thing,
basically.
Rhino.
Yeah, I think like I'm trying to like obviously we skipped a bunch of issues between this and our last episode. A major villain that showed up within that span was the Punisher, which is obviously one of Jerry Conway's like very iconic contributions to Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe. But I think about this point, like we're 139 issues into Spider-Man, and like they're kind of reaching for the villains, which granted it's not like, I mean, it's hard to tell what heroes are going to take off and what villains are going to take off and what are not. Like Vulture and like Electro, they're pretty dumb looking too.
Electro sucks. And like I know, like Lee and Dicko had like the enforcers. You know, not
Yeah.
everything was a smash
You
hit.
not like that mask on Electro? It's amazing.
It's terrible. It's so bad.
Awesome.
And then on that similar note, which we'll get back to this, but later on in this, like especially 150, you see like a bunch of very nostalgic villains, which again, that's an anniversary issue.
Right.
It's kind of like they were trying really hard to introduce new villains, but also like they were also just getting to the point where they're like, let's keep mining back to like the things that worked as well. Because like a bunch of other villains show up here and they haven't shown up in a long time, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But the Grizzly, Nick, did you talk about Ant-Man? You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, he shows up as sort of a supporting member in Nick Spencer's Ant-Man series from somewhat recently, and there he's not really like a bad guy anymore. He's sort of like I think he's like a work for hire kind of thing. With
Yeah, he's like a reformed-ish merc.
Is he kind of like
and
the
then he helps out Scott in that series. What'd you say?
A little bit. I wouldn't quite compare it to that. The other thing is, so Spidey's hanging out with Liz Allen to find a new apartment.
Yeah.
And the way they draw Liz Allen's top differs like from panel to panel and issue. Like there's a flashback to this scene in a few later issues, and like you see her from the back, and it looks like she was just wearing a bra on this day. But then one of the panels, it looks like she has like a full shirt, and like you can't see her back. I don't know. That just was weird to me.
Her shirt is just constantly changing. But I noticed Ross Andrew draws her hair really well, and I think like I don't know, he draws hair well in general. It might be a weird comment, but like yeah. Maybe something he kind of picked up following Ramita.
Yeah, and then I don't think Matt may not have seen this detail, but at some point during this issue, it's on the second page. Spidey's swinging, and there's a bunch of cars, and every single car is yellow, which I don't know if that was lazy coloring or it could alternately be that like the version I'm reading is actually slightly recolored from original publication, like when they touch up the issues and everything like that, and then maybe that person was feeling lazy. But just little tiny nitpicks. I think last episode, well, what did Spider-Man say? Did he call Jonah or himself Mr. Charisma 1973?
He said Jonah is not Mr. Charisma 1973.
Okay. Well, in this issue, Peter calls himself Mr. Masochism 1974.
Yeah.
So I don't. That must be a favorite thing for Jerry Conway. I like this. Like I think in this chunk of issues, Jerry Conway is like really hitting hard on like the like woe is me like Peter Parker characterization. At one point in this issue, he says something like if things are against me, I'm unhappy. Or no, if things go bad, I'm unhappy. If things go good, I'm unhappy. And later, we'll probably get into this, but later he like literally like makes depression jokes and everything.
Yeah.
Which I don't. Yeah. I mean, I may be misremembering, but I feel like Stan Lee and like earlier up until this point, like they weren't quite so like. I don't want to say Stan Lee wasn't quite so literal, but like I don't remember him quite having Spider-Man be like, "Oh, I had depression."
Yeah.
Mopey.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's probably a better way to put it because Stan was definitely not subtle, but about anything.
So also in issue 139, we actually have references to two of the last names of our co-hosts. Spider-Man makes a Faust joke.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up.
Precise context. And then as a sound effect, we see SPAC.
Yes.
And later on in this run, there's a conversation that includes Ford. So Nick,
this is legendary
now.
Oh, fair.
I don't know how they would fit in it. They could have like a De Palma bakery or something.
Also,
Pizzeria.
I'd like to thank Matt for Snapchatting me over the week the sound effect.
Yeah. You're welcome. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I actually did not catch it the first time, so.
So also in this first issue, there's an editor's note, and Spidey refers to an issue of Marvel Team Up, number 28, where he was hanging out with Hercules, and a group of people attempted to steal Manhattan. And if you've never heard of this story, it is very literal.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means.
The city stealers showed up, and they literally tried to steal the island of Manhattan, which involved moving the island. And in this story, is Peter's like, oh, I stopped it, I handled it. But he's kind of taking too much credit, because the way it was actually handled was Hercules, using like a giant chain, literally pulled Manhattan back into its place. So, and that issue, I think that issue was also written by Jerry Conway. Because at this point, I think Marvel Team Up is the only other Spider-Man series at this point. And so I guess for a while they had Conway writing both of them. Later on, when the line expands like crazy, you have to split up writers. And so I don't think Conway has a very good understanding of geology. But I won't put it against him. And so Peter's new neighborhood is Chelsea, New York. And Chelsea is in West Manhattan, and it's just to the south of Hell's Kitchen. Nowadays, it's known for its strong LGBT population, and it's known as a center of art across the entire world. It's like really dense with like art galleries, and just like
it's a pretty high-end, like expensive end part of town now, right?
Yeah, well, it is now. Yeah, heavy gentrification. Like it's experienced a lot of gentrification, but it's also like even like a lot of the other neighborhoods have gotten past this stage, but like Chelsea's still at a point where like you can have like this high-rise like condos right across the street from public housing. And I think Spidey, what was his rent, like 110 or something?
Yeah, 110 a month.
All right. In 2017 dollars, that would be $522 a month, based on inflation.
Less than mine.
And this may not be entirely accurate, but I tried to look up some average rent in Chelsea today, and the average rent is $3,800.
Whoa.
So
He's getting a good deal.
Inflation plus just New York in general, like being expensive as hell now.
Jesus.
So I mean, maybe like I don't know, Parker Industries might be necessary, because I don't know how Peter Parker is affording housing in New York. Now Matt Murdock, he's fine.
Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen would be real nice right now.
Ability, but like I have no idea how Peter's affording these houses with a photographer's salary.
But so in his rough neighborhood, in the next issue, in this rough down neighborhood, we meet one of the new women in Peter's life.
Yeah, Glory Grant.
I feel like everyone forgets about Glory. She's kind of great. I think she's underrated.
Yeah, just to be clear, Glory Grant is African American. I should clarify, because I mean it's somewhat significant.
Yeah, I mean, looking at her, it's sort of hard to tell.
Yeah. So also, Glory Grant, when she's talking to Peter, she says something like, "You should come over to my apartment for tea sometime," and tea is bolded in the lettering. Is she talking about tea, or is she talking about something else?
I mean, Jerry Conway's on Twitter. We can ask him.
I don't know. She has a lot of bolded letters.
Everyone tweet at Jerry Conway asking if Glory actually wants tea.
Well, I mean, it could be a sexual thing. I was really thinking like it was marijuana. But we'll get if Jerry Conway responds to us, we will definitely update you guys.
Yes.
I can't believe we're not talking at the end of 139 where Peter is literally taken out with a karate chop on his neck, and he wakes up in a chair to find a dancing green little demon who is the Jackal.
In a thong.
Yeah, in a thong.
Peter Parker is knocked out in almost every issue.
This
Yeah.
man is going to have
Yeah.
CT.
It's a problem. But yeah, no, he wakes up to a man in a bear suit and a dancing green imp in a thong.
All right. Well, here's the other thing.
Like,
Before he gets knocked out, his spider senses go off. So are they?
yeah,
Which we're jumping ahead a bit, but later on, his spider senses don't go off around the
Right.
Jackal due to a reason. So are his spider senses going off due to the Grizzly, or did Conway not think that far ahead?
I honestly
I
stopped
think
trying to. I stopped trying to make sense of spider sense.
Yeah, you can't really do that.
Conway probably didn't think that far
Yeah.
ahead. I mean, at this point, he doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and by the time get to the end of the story, he definitely does. I don't, unless I'm forgetting something. I don't know when he found that out.
I think it's when. Well, I don't know if we should spoil or.
I think he does this entire time. Like, I'm not really sure, but
No,
I think
because
he
he says
has to,
no
with
because
how elaborate the plan is.
he doesn't know here because he wants like Peter Parker to lead him to Spider-Man. Unless
Right.
Right? He puts that thing on his arm.
oh yeah,
Well, that's my favorite scene of 140, where he's
It's
like
great.
in the coffee shop with Ned and Betty, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll take that cup." He's like, "What the fuck's going on with my arm?"
Yeah, and then he just takes it off. Is there ever like an explanation for that?
yeah. He deals with that really quickly.
Like, it's just there.
It's just
So, yeah.
Conway turns the melodrama up to 12 for really no reason, and it's amazing.
He's like on drug, strung out, and he runs to the bathroom. And he's like, "What the hell's going on?"
So, Matt, you want to quickly try and fill us in on some of this? This was not the Jackal's first appearance, correct?
No, the Jackal first appeared in 129, along with the Punisher.
Okay, but so does he have? Was that like a full appearance, or was it like one of those like in shadow things?
I believe it was a full appearance. I haven't read that. I haven't read that in a long time. But I
Because
believe it was
Peter
a full
says
appearance.
it's the Jackal right from like looking at him, so he
Yeah.
knows who it is.
He hasn't seen the Jackal.
No,
I guess-
but it says he says he's heard the voice before. Though he's never seen this strange olive garb grotesque before, Peter has heard his voice.
Well, the Jackal has appeared on at least on. He was on the cover of I want to say 134, along with Hammerhead. Like he's appeared. The Jackal has appeared in the book before, whether Pete has seen him or not.
Okay, I just wasn't totally sure.
Yeah.
And so I think we mentioned at the end of last episode, but and some of it's referenced here, but a few other things have happened within the meantime of these two episodes because it's not a huge chunk. So the Punisher showed up, Harry Osborn put on the Green Goblin suit for a little bit, and that's referenced here where he set off an explosive of some sort and injured MJ. Not visibly, at least. Like MJ has no visible injuries, but she gets to get like a whole semester at the least off of school to recover.
It exploded her psyche.
Yeah. And we're talking about the Grizzly and Cyclone, but also I think that the arc right before this was the Mind Worm, which out of those three, he's probably the dumbest villain.
The Mind Worm sucks. That story is just kind of amazing, where Pete moves in with Flash Thompson and turns out his entire neighborhood is being possessed by this psychic autistic kid. It's great.
I really like the Grizzlies' reasoning for becoming a villain, and it's all because it shows how petty and awful of a person J. Jonah Jameson is.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question: is he like? It's kind of implied that the Grizzly is like this horribly like. I mean, it doesn't fully explain what he does. He's a professional wrestler, and like maybe he's cutting people, but you're not supposed to, or like.
Okay, as a wrestling fan, it seems like the Grizzly's a little bit of a stiff worker. And this is the 1970s. The era was known for that. It looks to me like J. Jonah Jameson doesn't know that professional wrestling isn't real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But at the same time, then why wouldn't any of the Grizzlies like coworkers back him up?
because this is the 1970s. Kayfabe was real. You couldn't break character.
So they'll let their coworker go to prison
Yeah,
so that they don't reveal that wrestling's fake in front of the jury.
exactly.
Okay,
You gotta keep kayfabe.
I mean, I buy that.
That
Jim
flash
Cornette would be very proud of those workers.
that flashback when he sent the Grizzly to prison, essentially, he says if a crusade was still a newspaper, then J. Jonah Jameson will have a crusade. That's fantastic. Like he thinks but he really, but he's pretending like that he's doing something good for the people. He's just trying to sell newspapers.
I feel like I really want to buy my theory that J. Jonah Jameson did not know that professional wrestling is fake and thought it's all real.
I also like.
I can subscribe to that.
I like Spider-Man handing Jonah his cigar and
Oh,
lighting
that's
it
a
for
great
him.
sequence. And then he takes it from him, and then he crushes it.
Yeah, it's like a single person good cop bad cop thing.
But the funniest part is like, for some reason, Jonah's like sleeping on his office couch, and like he's like, "Spider-Man, what do you want, you miserable Michigan? If you're planning to rob me, forget it. I never carry cash."
Yeah.
Bullshit, you carry cash.
Wait, this might sound really stupid and definitely ageist, but did they even have credit cards in 1974?
Yeah, wasn't that part of the Great Depression?
Credit cards? I don't think so.
I don't. I
thought that
doubt
was.
it.
I feel like there had like, if not, they had to have been in for their infancy, but maybe they weren't taken everywhere yet. But J. Jonah Jameson is definitely someone who carries cash.
Yeah, and then he goes to. I like him just like creeping around, walking on the ceiling. When he goes to what was it, the mansion that the Jackal was using,
Yeah.
and he's just walking around the ceiling. It's just funny looking. And then he goes and talks to this owner of a gym, because he's like, oh, he's a wrestler. I gotta go to the gym.
Right. The gym community. The people who work out, they'll know where he is.
And this gym owner says, I thought you was the masked Marvel. And I tried to do some looking on that. I don't think the masked Marvel was a thing.
Okay, I've never heard of them.
But it became a thing. He's apparently like a background character in like Young Avengers who had like 5 appearances.
I don't think it's a reference to like a comic thing.
I know, but I'm saying the masked Marvel eventually ended up being a Marvel character.
In Young Avengers?
Yeah, I think so. We'll look at it later. But
Okay.
and the real name of the real masked Marvel is Adam Austin, which was a pseudonym that Gene Colan used for a long time. I don't know why. So he fights the Grizzly in the wrestling ring.
Well, he goes to take revenge, and it just so happens that all of the wrestlers that wronged him 10 years ago are in this gym at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's revealed that Grizzly's just a bitch.
Yeah, he's a fat guy with an exoskeleton.
Yep.
Rips off all his clothes.
Yeah, Peter totally humiliates him. Yeah, and strips him, which is kind of...
Yeah, that's it kind of for the Grizzly for now. Leave him on the wall.
All right, so now let's move into, well, real quick, then between 140 and 141, giant-sized Spider-Man number 3 exists, also by Conway and Andrew. And this one, I don't think even Matt has read, because it like a lot of the giant-size issues, they're kind of like Marvel Team Up. They often have him like hanging out with someone else. Like, I think was the first one like Dracula or something. I don't know what the second one was. Dracula was one of them. And the third one features Doc Savage, which is like a pulp character that Marvel does not have the rights to anymore. So they pretty much can't reprint it at all. That's like Doc Savage also occasionally, like, Marvel had like a series for him and like a magazine for him or whatever. But he occasionally showed up in like Team Up and like Marvel 2-in-1 and stuff like that. And so they just always skip those issues. It's similar to like any issue featuring Rom or something like that. So now going into 141, with this opening splash page, yeah, we got some more cringe.
No, there's no cringe here. The Spider-Mobile is awesome.
House, I have a toy of the Spider-Mobile.
Why?
But is it life size?
Damn, I wish it was. It is such a beautifully just wow. The rims are Spider-Man faced. It
The
is
license plate saying Spidey just makes it just. I don't know. It's just so funny.
Because I think it's the next issue. He says he designed it himself, which I mean is.
I mean, he designed his costume himself.
Did he actually design it himself though? Because isn't it like some weird licensing deal in universe with like a car company?
It was an in-universe licensing deal with Corona Motors, I believe he says.
Corona Motors.
Corona Motors.
Which I believe
is making cars.
I believe meta-wise, the Spider-Mobile is included as an actual like deal with a toy company. But like it's not clear at all because there's no logo on the car, so I don't know what kid is like, oh, I gotta buy that.
Was this like a connection between like Spidey and the electric company? Was that the deal? Was that
no? It was some like toy company that made toy cars, but like I assume they had a Spider-Mobile version, and so like it would be obvious. But like there are logos not on this car.
Yeah, at the beginning of 142, he says he spent 2 months designing and building it, so he did it himself.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're gonna put a stupid car like this, like dumb licensing deal with like a company within the story, like if you're gonna do it at all, like I kind of like that's the best way to handle it, and not make it too cheesy.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get much easier than this, does it?
Yeah. And also,
that happens. We need to give Spider-Man a car. But wait, you know he can just swing from building. Give him a car.
Yeah, that's the other thing. He explains that he's using it to get around New York faster, but like he can definitely swing around faster.
Yeah, he doesn't have to obey traffic laws.
Yeah, but what if there's like places with lower buildings? Maybe he needs it for that.
I mean,
like when you Spider-Man Central Park and you're just like, you can't swing on anything, so you got to run.
He's out of luck. Gotta call his car.
But the Spider-Mobile is quickly taken care of because he just fucking
dumps it in the river.
Also,
I totally saw an alley, but wait, I read this comic. I didn't see a single alley.
Peter doesn't have his license, right?
I doubt it.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't have his license. Maybe Spider-Man does, but
I mean, Aunt May doesn't have a car, does she?
No.
As far as I know.
I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily know why he would have his license.
I don't know.
I thought the 3 cops that look over the pier once he drives it off. He went right off into this pier, doing 90 at least. And they're just like, that's one less person to worry about. We're not going to investigate.
Later in the issue, he also calls he abbreviates the Spider-Mobile as the SM, which I think that just makes it worse.
It's not great.
But like, I mean, this is what I was saying earlier. He crawls out of the water and he says, if I weren't already one of the most depressed people alive, that'd be enough to make me want to slit my throat. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I read that. I was like, that seems a little excessive.
I was kind of thinking, like, do you think, like, if they put that exact line in a Spider-Man comic today, do you think there would be, like, a very mild, like, controversy online?
I think there might be.
Where people would be like, Dan Slott, you can't joke about suicide. Kids are reading.
And he'll be like, Jerry Conway did it.
So now we see that Spidey has failed introductory biochemistry.
Right. He's in Biochem 106 in issue 141. He enrolled in college 100 issues ago. What is he doing?
I mean, the timeline, is pretty fucked. But
I like Miles Warren being like, "Hey, Peter, you fucked up once. Don't do it again, or I'll kick your ass out."
Yeah.
And also, no professor is ever that caring. They're just like, "I got my money. Like, I don't care if he wants or not."
It's hard to gauge.
He knows this is his 5th time taking the class.
it's hard to gauge how many people were in that class. Like, it doesn't look like it's more than like 25 people. So like,
Yeah.
somewhat understandable on that level. It's not like he's like in a 100-person lecture.
I'm assuming Empire State University is a state school. Miles Warren's getting his money. He shouldn't care.
Yeah. And then, like I said, MJ, it's not even like semester. She said I'm pretty sure she said she's taking off the year because of her injuries.
Yeah, looks like
Yeah,
it.
Peter says, I heard
Her
you guys
injury
signed up
looks
this year.
better than ever.
But then I really I like this like spunk of MJ where she says, "Today you can be the sex object, Mr. Parker."
Yeah, she
Yeah.
graded the books.
After all, men aren't the only ones who can be chauvinistic. I think this is like that exact point where like these like writers are like trying to like make the female characters not just complete like damsels and like actually add character, but it's also like the early 70s, so it's like with Miss Marvel and everything, it's like, oh, she's a feminist at a feminist magazine.
Yeah.
And so like it's like they're going into it. I think I was reading another comic recently that like somewhat around this era, and like they liked the word chauvinist, the writers at the time. And then
Pete steals a Deuce McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll get there. The better scene is Robbie and Jonah going to their fancy swanky club as they have a phone delivered to them.
Yeah.
I question. Do you think Robbie's a member of this club, or is he Jonah's +1?
I think he's Jonah's guest.
Jonah's +1.
Okay.
He's a token member.
Because I wonder if Robbie could afford it. Like at one point they refer to Robbie as the city editor. Is he not like an editor-in-chief of the paper?
I think he is. I think he's editor-in-chief at this point.
Definitely
And
second man.
Jonas is publishing.
I mean, a little bit later on, maybe an issue or so later. I mean, Robbie's getting a raise, and so is everyone else at the Bugle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and then
I
Spider-Man
don't know if they actually got that.
Right.
I don't think they did.
steals a McDonald's.
But also in this issue, as MJ's trying to flirt with him and stuff, he's still hung up on Gwen. Like,
Yeah.
MJ's holding his hand and like trying to like flirt with him, and then he sees like Gwen's disembodied face in the wind. He's imagining it.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
under
so,
that,
like,
right above her disembodied face, there's a caption box that's by itself that just reads, "That girl is dead."
Yep, that's true. He should take that seriously. So then he literally steals a guy's McDonald's, and
Yep.
I like how he steals it, but then justifies, "Oh, I'll just web shoot like a few bucks his way."
But he doesn't get the chance.
No, because he just falls off a building. It doesn't happen.
Like, that's still dickish anyways. Like, I don't care if you're Spider-Man. Like, oh, let me take your car. I'll just throw $20,000 at you real quick. But then obviously,
A hard blue collar worker who has a construction job, and he's finally going home for the day. And Spider-Man just swings down and steals his fucking dinner.
tell you what, he's probably one of those crane drivers that's always helping Spidey out too.
That's what he is.
Hey, yo,
He's probably
Spidey!
more than happy. It was a donation.
This is like we have to start keeping like a spider dick count.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
He's a menace.
Ashwell is.
If one of our hosts Billy was here, like, this is a major Spider-Man dick moment.
Yeah, we can.
I'm a little bit upset Billy isn't here because he would have so much to say.
You
Yeah.
can quote him as saying that he wanted us to let people know that Spider-Man's a menace.
I mean, he clearly is.
So then Mysterio shows up with his gas thing.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. How does Mysterio know about some of these characters? I mean, this isn't Quentin Beck, which we'll get to in a minute. But how does this guy know who the Grizzly is? How does he know who the Jackal is?
Well,
Maybe Tarantula. I'm not sure about that.
I think it's really just that Conway and Andrew want these characters to be part of the gang. It's Spider-Man's rogue gallery. in canon, I'm gonna say it's the gas. So
Yeah, it's like
it's
Peter-
It's more like Peter seeing it than Mysterio projecting it.
But this isn't
Yeah.
from the gas. Though. This is from his. Isn't
an
this
image
from his
projector.
chest?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a psychic. It does. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's still
We also have
the wall and
what?
ruined fans.
Earlier, so McDonald's, it's very clearly McDonald's, but technically, like the actual logo on the sign is blocked off. It's obvious.
Right.
Here, they actually give a shout out directly to Mack Truck. And Mack Truck did not pay them for this, so I guess they were just filling up to it. Which that got me thinking about like mentioning brand names in comics, because like one of their books out right now is Champions, and it's supposed to be like a bunch of teen heroes and stuff like that. But like they're not allowed to use like, or at least they don't say iPad, and like I don't know. There's a bunch of other examples where like didn't Mark Waid's Captain America, wasn't there like a mention of like Snapchat, but it's not Snapchat, or no, Candy Crush.
Yep.
Was it Candy Crush?
Yeah, they don't.
But
Call it.
but they can't. So like I wasn't really sure. Like, can they not call it Candy Crush? Like, or do they choose not to call it Candy Rush so that they're not doing free advertising?
Well, I thought in that specific instance that it was more that Steve is out of touch with the kids. You know what
Yeah,
Candy Crush is.
Yeah,
But
that could definitely also be it. I mean, it's just like his writer.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
But so maybe that's just more evidence that Wade is the right choice to write it. But I don't know. That it just got me thinking. Like I don't want to dwell on that too much, but it's kind of interesting. And so Pete punches a wall and like
I love this scene. He just keeps punching it.
Keep pushing the
Messes
wall.
up his hands.
I like the panel where he looks down and like his costume's all
Fingers
shredded.
destroyed.
Yeah, the web
Yeah.
shooter's broken.
I think just like because I don't know, you don't see. I mean, you do every once in a while, like when he's fighting. Like it happens later with when he fights the Jackal. But, like you don't see his costume ripped very often.
Mhm.
And like artistically, like a ripped costume, you're gonna get more detail and stuff like that. That panel almost reminds me of like some like Todd McFarlane shit because like especially in like the Adjectiveless run, like Spidey gets his costume like fucking destroyed, and it's all like ripped up and stuff. And then so for pretty much I think the entire rest of this like run that we're reading here, he has bandages on his hands.
I think it's up until the final 2 issues.
Yeah,
I think that sounds right.
For a while.
and on art, I mean it makes sense because it's just one artist almost this entire time, but pretty consistent with like not forgetting to put the bandages on like in one panel or anything like that. So Mysterio, and it's not clear yet who Mysterio is because then he shows up and Ned Leeds tells him, oh, he died in prison.
He's a ghost.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they cover the next issue, 142.
I love this cover.
Yeah, it's Mysterio taking the fishbowl off and there's nothing below it. So it's like, is he a ghost? Could be.
With the word stereo means madness under it.
Oh, actually, I want to go back real quick. There's just a quick comment. In one of the panels of 141, not sure which one, because it's literally just one panel, we see in the background of the New York skyline, we see the Twin Towers.
Oh, I gotta find this.
Never forget. And so then moving into 142, he checks out the Spider-Mobile, but ultimately does not salvage it.
Yeah, just leaves it there.
I found
When
it.
does the Spider-Mobile next appear?
Old Man Logan.
That's the next appearance I know of. I can't be right though.
That's got to be shown up.
Because he's in it's in Slot's Parker Industries run, right?
I'm guessing Deadpool
he
steals it.
He gets a new one, and he gets a new one at the Parker Industries thing. It's all tricked out, and it's dumb.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that later. Maybe I'll put it in the description.
I'm
seems
gonna
like-
guess it has to do with Deadpool.
It seems like Slot wanted to reference the Spider-Mobile because he
160. Sorry.
160.
it says I don't know. He faces off against a modified version because of the Tinker.
That makes sense.
So
Wait,
maybe
he
like
fights the
20
Spider-Mobile?
That's what this says. He faced off against a modified version courtesy of the Tinker.
All right, that might be worse.
Battling it out with the car, he subdues the vehicle.
Oh yeah, he does. That's the last issue in this book. He fights the Spider-Mobile.
Oh god.
The issue was
I gotta
titled "My
read that.
Killer of the Car."
I have to read that.
All right,
I
so
forgot about that.
Like
then
when
we
Peter
move
yells, he's
into,
like, I put my full weight on my hand.
Yeah.
so now Pete's just hallucinating every once in a while, which brings us to Aunt May is creepy as fuck.
Yeah, I texted Matt about this. This is
Yeah.
the creepiest Aunt May face. It is the most sinister thing I've seen ever.
I don't know like how much of it was intentional and stuff because like I'd have to really think for like any moment where Aunt May looks normal just in the history of Spider-Man. Like because well that's what I was thinking. Like I think John Romita Jr. draws her pretty weird too.
But when
But
Mike texted me about this picture, I knew exactly which panel he was referring to. This image has stuck with me my entire life. It looks like a zombie.
we make fun of Osborn face from Sins Past, but holy shit, this thing will haunt your nightmares.
It will.
it's really weird too because later on in this run, Anna Watson shows up, who's MJ's aunt, and she looks totally normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Just
like
May.
I think they're supposed to be like pretty much the exact same age. So I don't know what Ben Parker was thinking.
Hey Vince, just a spur of the moment thing. When you cut up and do the thumbnail for this video, can you please cut that panel out and put the Aunt May's face in the thumbnail?
I don't know, maybe.
Super
this is
compressed.
It's probably gonna be Jackal.
Aw.
But so yeah, so he's talking to Aunt May on the phone, and he's getting all these hallucinations. I like how MJ showed some jealousy towards Glory Grant.
Yeah.
Glory Grant. Yeah, Matt said like Glory Grant is like kind of like the like forgotten one, sort of. It's not in this run, but I think there's an issue later where it's like heavily implied that he has sex with Glory Grant. Because like they never like totally officially dated, right? At least during this
I don't
era.
think so. I don't think they've ever really dated. They might have hooked up at one point. That sounds
Yeah.
right. But
Yeah, I think it's implied, but like they weren't going to show any sex scene at this point. But like
No.
I think even still they were trying to be really really subtle because this is the 70s and a lot of their fans were still pretty iffy about stuff.
I'd like to say that Peter Parker is financially, I think, irresponsible because MJ and him are literally just sitting on his floor, and Peter Parker's rocking a pretty nice jacket that's probably a good amount of money.
Yeah.
Bought some furniture, man.
He doesn't own a bed, but he has 3 different jackets. So
He's a different jacket every issue. So that either means Spider-Man is stealing them, or Peter Parker is the most financially irresponsible person ever.
he's just probably
But
bad
yeah,
money.
Spidey goes to Macy's and he'll be like, "Oh, I'll just web shoot $5." But then fucking Shocker shows up outside, so he's like, "Gotta go." But yeah, I mean, this has been discussed a lot, like by a lot of people. But like at this point, like Peter Parker is like handsome as hell, and like he dresses like perfectly for the era as well. This is definitely way past. This is definitely way past that like nerd high school era. I mean, the glasses are gone completely.
Yeah, this is no Ditko.
Yeah, I like how, and then we get a moment in the Bugle where MJ is. I mean, it's understandable sort of how this proceeds, but MJ's trying to have like a serious conversation with Betty about how she's like resolving her feelings for Peter and how she wants to move forward with that. And then Betty and Ned are like, "Oh yeah, let's announce our engagement."
Wait,
Right.
hold
And
up. We're not
then-
going to talk about J. Jonah Jameson jumping over his desk, clicking
Well,
his
yeah.
stick together, falling on his ass.
That's pretty hilarious.
Conway really likes his little moments of brevity. Some of them work like that one, some of them don't. But
It just paints Jonah as this lunatic, and I love it.
yeah,
Yeah, so Betty and Ned are engaged, and I think they get married like maybe late 150s or 160 something. So not too far after this.
it's not much later. It's within this book that I'm holding. So
And then their marriage didn't turn out so well.
you could say that.
And we can thank Christopher Priest for that.
It's 156.
You
Okay,
want to
yeah.
explain what happens?
All right, so there's a one-shot called Spider-Man versus Wolverine, where Spidey and Ned Leeds go to Europe. I forget what country.
Yugoslavia.
And they go to Europe, and in the process, Ned Leeds dies. And the editor of the Spider-Man books at the time was Christopher Priest, at that point known as James Owsley. And he wrote that issue, but then didn't tell any of the other Spider-Man writers that he was writing it. And like a lot of the other writers even had plans for like Ned Leeds and Betty, and so everything just got scrapped.
Whoops.
And I think did Ned eventually return? Right? I think he's alive.
No,
Did
he's
Slot come back?
still dead.
I don't remember.
Oh wow.
I know in the Remender Venom run, his death is still pretty significant for Betty.
Okay, yeah. So then Pete leaves the Bugle. Well, he leaves the Bugle because he sees a blonde
He's
chick.
Gwen.
Well, he sees a
Yeah.
blonde chick.
Well,
Well, yeah, but just based on what she's wearing, you can tell.
yeah, it's
Right,
heavily
'cause-
implied who it is.
Yeah.
Well, because Gwen only had one outfit, and nobody else wears Gwen's outfit. Like, that's the Gwen Stacy outfit. We can't wear that.
Wrong. She has multiple outfits, but in different colors.
That's right. It's the Gwen
So-
Stacy jacket thing. I can't wear that. I look like Gwen Stacy.
So he thinks he sees Gwen, but for now he's just like, oh, it's a hallucination,
Mhm.
and/or I'm going crazy. And then we get a quick mind worm reference, which I talked about earlier, was the arc right before this run of issues. And he reveals that projector from Mysterio, which he knows about. And then he comes across Mysterio. And then I love how, so this is the second Mysterio, Danny Burkhart.
Yeah.
And there was a third Mysterio too, right? In the Gauntlet? Or was
Yeah.
that Quinn?
No,
It was-
I believe there's a third one, but I can't remember his name.
Well, to my
Um,
knowledge, Quentin Beck had to have come back because Kevin Smith uses him in his Daredevil run,
Yep.
Yeah.
where he
No,
kills
that's a
him.
different
Kills him
one.
again.
There's a
But
different
then
one
he
in Kevin
brings him
Smith.
back in Spider-Man Black Hat.
There's
And
there's
that's
one
Gwen
from like Peter David's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man that was like not actually Mysterio or something. It was like, I don't know. There's more than there's at
There's
least
more
like
than two.
three.
Yeah, there's a
Maybe,
bunch
there
of
might be
Mysterio.
4.
Well, I love how this guy literally explains everything. He explains all of his gadgets, and we even see like diagrams basically.
Yeah.
He explains exactly who he is, exactly how he's connected to Quentin, how he got the suit. He just gives up everything. He's not even like totally clearly. I mean, he's tied up now, but still, like, plead the fifth, bro.
Yeah.
And then
And then
it's
Jonah
revealed.
takes off. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's revealed that he was in cahoots with Jonah,
Mm-hmm.
and Jonah's like, "I'm out."
Yeah, he
But,
just
like-
runs to Europe
Yes, I'm going
Yeah.
to Paris.
But what was his plan?
just to hide out.
Yeah, just hide until it blows over.
Until when?
24-hour news
Like-
cycle. It's gonna be. People gonna forget about it.
They can't
Here's-
get you if you're not in the country. Like that's how criminals.
Well, here's the other
Kill the
thing.
Roman Polanski.
Well, let's get real technical.
Jeez.
Okay.
What could Jonah get charged for?
Aiding and abetting.
A felon.
Yeah, he's the one. He promised Mysterio money if he kept harassing Spider-Man.
But first of all, is Mysterio going to give that up? Second of all,
He says that he would.
how can you? Again, they're committing a crime against Spider-Man, who, until
The
recently,
last episode is a noted assaulter of cops.
well, yeah, he has his bad reputation with the law at this point. But also, until Charles Soule's Daredevil run, Spider-Man cannot appear in court.
Right.
So Spidey's not going to do anything. So I feel like Jonah would be fine.
Well, he didn't think it through then, because he
That's
made
what
it really
I'm
fast.
saying. And we're going to get into it right now. But Jonah, his plan to escape to France, it goes south very quickly.
Immediately.
He comes off as soon as he gets off the plane.
Also, I think I skipped one thing. I think when Betty tells MJ that she's engaged,
Mhm.
MJ, her reaction is far out. And that's the thing in this era. MJ says far out, like that's her other catchphrase.
Yeah.
She
Very
says it like 5 times in this run, which that does not hold up at all. All right. So then,
143.
well, before we move into 143, we got another quick intermission for Giant-Size Spider-Man number 4. Also, I think you had said that you weren't sure if it was by Conway and Andrew, but I think it is.
I think it is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt, you want
it
to
is.
talk about that real quick?
It's pretty simple. Spider-Man comes across this chick getting kidnapped. He's rescued by the Punisher, who shoots a guy in the face, and then he tells him about Moses Magnum, who later shows up to try and sink Japan in Claremont's Uncanny X-Men. And Moses Magnum has this really bad gas that melts people, and he's taking kidnapped victims to South America to melt them. And so then they attack his skyscraper in New York, and Spidey gets captured, which apparently was part of the plan. He gets dropped off in South America, so the Punisher finds him. They melt Moses Magnum, so he's super dead, except he's not, and then they leave in the end. That's really it.
Right. But so that was not included here. The other one wasn't included because Doc Savage, but is that remotely relevant to clone stuff? Does Gwen show up once? I mean,
No.
Yeah, she definitely doesn't. Is there any real development with like MJ?
MJ's not in it either.
Okay.
It's basically what it seems like is they went, oh, the Punisher's doing pretty well. People like the Punisher.
Yeah.
Put him in a book. It's called Giant Size Spider-Man and the Punisher.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right on the cover. So.
So the Punisher was the first appearance 129, right?
129, and he was also in 134.
Okay. So
it's mentioned somewhere within this issue.
All right. So yeah, that's probably like his third appearance or something like that. And then obviously he took off pretty quickly and has had like 1 billion titles. Yeah. At one point, the Punisher held up 3 ongoing titles at one time.
That's insane.
Which I think tied with Wolverine and Deadpool, but beaten out by Spider-Man and Batman, I guess, and Superman.
Right.
All right, so moving into 143. Again, we get some more like mopey Peter, where he's like, all that introspection must have opened a Pandora's box of guilt and delusion.
Yep.
There's also in this issue, there's a little bit of like commentary about the economics of the time, because Jerry Conway focuses on the airport, Kennedy International, and he talks about how a lot more people used to fly because of cheap fuel. But at this point, this is the 70s, and we're going through the energy crisis. So comics have always been just a little bit political.
Just a little bit, just enough.
So Pete is going to France because Robbie got a ransom note.
You talk
Right.
about how he's like strangely hitting on Betty.
Yeah, I think that's like their like weird chemistry. Again, like
Friendly.
well, that's the other thing is he says, "Hold still." Does he kiss her on the cheek between these two panels,
It looks like
or
it.
does he just tease it? Okay.
Implied. Oh, come
So-
on. You know you're the only girl I ever loved. I guess that was all lies to Gwen Stacy then, because all he's been going on about is Gwen's the only girl he ever loved.
Well,
All
he
right.
said that same thing to Aunt May.
Well,
Also, Peter rocking a very nice suede green jacket this time.
Who's it green?
well, Betty's got to hit up Twitter and hashtag Me Too because Peter should be getting fired for sexual harassment right about now.
The balls on Peter Parker to do this in front of her fiance.
Wait, oh, never mind. He just took his jacket off. All right. So he and Robbie have Chinese food right before the airport, which I like that. It looks like a pretty decent restaurant.
It does. Although apparently they only had 2 bowls of wonton soup.
Well, that's also I questioned that. Does that
Yeah,
mean each had 1 bowl, or did both of them have 2 bowls?
Oh, they both had 2 bowls. It was 4 bowls total.
I like how
They
they're
both
like,
had 1 bowl, and they're like, "Oh, we need more wonton soup."
yeah.
There's 4 bowls.
I like to
Wonton
imagine.
soup is like all broth, so they're just drinking broth, I guess.
Yeah, I like to imagine the waitress is like, "What do you guys want for appetizers?" And they're like, "1 wonton soup for each of us." And then she comes back and she's like, "What do you guys want?" And they're like, "Oh, damn, we have a flight. Let's just get more wonton soup." It's like they don't have time for an entree.
Yeah.
But then like,
Restaurant business, number 1, we hate delivering and getting soups. Number 2, soups aren't that expensive, so this waiter or waitress is not getting a very good tip. So, way to go, Peter. You're not a very experienced person in a restaurant.
and either as soon as they got to the airport or on the flight, they definitely have to go to the bathroom. Which
I
I
thought
mean,
of that.
And then and since they ate Chinese food, they'll be hungry again in an hour.
for the sake of continuity, I would have liked to see a panel where Pete's just like, "Oh, damn, I gotta go to the bathroom."
That I would appreciate that. Yeah, that would really work. Immediately after this this airport kiss scene, that'd be perfect timing for it.
Or right before it, but
During it.
or right before it, but there's a caption that says, I forgot to wash my hands."
There you go.
No, I want the entire issue of just him and Robbie on the plane, but the airport with the airplane bathroom is occupied, so Spider-Man has to figure out a different way to use the bathroom for 22 pages.
All right,
I read that.
Matt, you want to talk about these next few pages real quick?
Yeah. So Pete and MJ Pete and Robbie about to get on their plane to go to Paris, and Pete asks MJ why he always calls her Tiger, and she says, "Oh, Petey, I call you Tiger because you're not." And they kiss, and this is their first. It's their first kiss. And these 3 pages are there's this issue about fighting cyclones, so whatever. But these 3 pages are some of the, I think, the best stuff Conway and Andrew has ever done.
Yeah, I got turned on. It's pretty nice.
I really like the number 1 in the kiss panel. What's really funny is the Robbie's just sitting there chomping down on his pipe, and he's like smiling, like he's like, "All right."
Yeah.
Also, my favorite panel is the close-up of Peter's. It looks like a meme, and I might start using it as such. And it's ha 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 ha. Peter Parker laughs.
Yes.
Okay, but like this would never happen in today's age because MJ made it all the way to their gate. Like you can't do that anymore. Which
Yeah,
is
you
kind of a
cannot.
shame.
I think
It wouldn't happen.
I think you can if you are escorting someone an underage, an unaccompanied minor.
Okay,
So,
so which of the 2 is underage?
They both are.
but
Well,
yeah,
I mean, looks 40. He's actually 12.
this is a great scene now.
It is.
Yeah.
We get 2 full panels of the kiss too. And also, is the camera turning or are they turning during the kiss?
They're definitely slowly rotating as they kiss.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Like, it's real passionate. Like, they gotta move around.
Yeah.
Get some different angles.
Well,
And
they noticed Robbie watching. They got out of the way.
And we got a bunch of shots of the plane taking off.
I think the third page is like really, it's part of the other two, and I think it's just as important.
Yes.
And I think this third page, like, this is like some great just storytelling and stuff like that, where you see you see like that. I want for a second I almost said gazebo, but like you see the like gate where like he's coming from, like gets smaller in the distance and stuff. Well, actually, kind of the reverse, but like it's Peter like saying goodbye, and then it's like definitely set in time in the final panel where MJ says "far freaking out."
Yeah.
And it's written very small, so you can totally tell like she just like is mumbling it under her breath.
Right. It's dated, but I think it works. I think it worked really well.
It's very good. You can still see her standing at the terminal watching the plane take off too.
Yeah.
So now we're in Paris, and we learn that it's 3 days after Christmas. And Matt, I think you were saying giant size 4 were you saying that was also a Christmas story technically?
Well, I did say that. It just mentioned offhand that it's Christmas time.
Okay.
And then it's not. I thought it was mentioned again later, but it wasn't. So.
All right. But we're in the season, which is timely because it is currently New Year's Eve as we're recording this. So Robbie gets grabbed.
Yeah.
And go ahead. All right. So Robbie gets grabbed because he's gonna figure out the ransom, and then Pete knocks out some goons.
And then Pete knocks out Robbie because that's the best thing to do in this situation.
Yeah, that was fucked up. Like, why did he need to do that?
Because he doesn't.
Because later he shows that like he doesn't want Spider-Man to like he doesn't want Robbie to think Spider-Man's there, right? But then like later he shows him anyway, so it's kind of it's sort of unnecessary.
I think it's Spider-Man's an asshole.
Well, and we know obviously he doesn't, but we as the reader know Robbie probably, if he doesn't now, he will later know that Pete is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So like this is all around entirely unnecessary.
And then, while he's tracking Robbie the second time, I think I like how we get a full like tour of Paris.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Conway's just like include all the landmarks.
Yeah. And right after that, he as he's rescuing Robbie again, he karate chops Robbie in the back of the head and knocks him out.
Yeah, it's kind of, and then we meet our infamous villain,
Cyclone.
This was weak.
Cyclone sucks.
His powers are pretty literal. I like how he has this like vaguely like weird political backstory that you can like stretch to interpret in different ways.
Yeah, because it's so vague.
Yeah, he's like this inventor who invented something like that eventually evolved into his like power suit thing. And he worked for NATO, but then like the US refused to like buy his thing because they would only buy American made. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I feel like
I'd be angry too.
I feel like we get some interesting interpretations of this backstory from our current president. But then moving in, the 144, it's like one of the more famous covers.
Yeah.
It happens to be the cover of the paperback I'm reading from. What's the cover of that Essential?
It's 152.
Okay, yeah. Isn't that 141? 151, I mean.
It's 151.
Right, 151.
But the cover of this issue doesn't actually happen in the book, which I mean, I think you could technically say that about all the other covers too, but like for such an iconic image, like this is not at all how it happens.
No.
So apparently France is nuttier than New York, which is good to know.
Yeah.
I love Peter's sweater in this issue.
With the whatever that is across the top.
Yeah, he's got a nice little design on it, and also
It's like
like
Galaga ships.
the collar is like real low cut and wide.
Yeah.
Like
It's
that.
very interesting.
I think if you wore a sweater like that today, it'd be kind of daring. Like,
oh, definitely. It's
again,
It
Peter
reminds me of,
Parker.
those wide, like you've seen them downtown. It's like usually associated with like Greek letters, like more so women wear them, but like it's like the very loose fitting like old school. I think they're like called the old school jerseys or something. It looks almost something like that where it's very wide, but yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. So Pete is like, okay, I'm gonna give the ransom, whatever.
And then Anthony has a heart
Calls
attack.
Aunt May, and she is a little bit of a freak out.
Yeah, again, Anne May looks creepy as hell, and Anna Watson looks totally fine. And she thinks she sees Gwen. She thinks she sees Gwen, and then she's like, "Oh shit, I'm having dementia."
yeah.
I always knew it would happen. My mind, it's going.
Yeah.
And then
I like what Peter's face is a force ghost in the snow.
yeah, again, is that just an artistic thing while she's thinking of Peter, or does she actually have dementia?
See, both. It's both.
It's got to be both.
Yeah. So they have Robbie. He's taking the ransom to Notre Dame, and
Say that in English.
And then he fights some goons and he fights Cyclone. It's I don't know. I don't think it's that interesting.
yeah,
No, I felt like
I like how on the
issues
way.
were really just. I guess this issue in general, like all the Paris stuff, I just wasn't interested in at all.
Oh,
It felt like a lot of filler.
which is a shame because like I like Robbie and I like Jonah and I guess the story's kind of about them except not really.
Well, I think it doesn't
So,
like. It also just ended with that great moment between Pete and MJ, and then like right after it, because we see Gwen's back, everything's on hold immediately.
well, of course, because Conway's got to do that melodrama thing.
Okay, but
They're
him
finally hitting it off.
Him stopping at a
So
hardware
Gwen's back.
store to build a giant fan to stop Cyclone is kind of hilarious.
yeah, yeah. So the
He
way
has
he,
Pushes it all up a hill.
Yeah.
I like how he
It's
had to
huge.
rent out an entire cart to carry it
Yeah,
to make this giant fan. They don't explain at all like how the fan defeats him, like what the point, like
Because he like blows his wind the other way, so it beats him.
it's like the Flash. It's like
Yeah,
the
Flash
Flash.
just run around him the other way, and that's how you beat a villain like that. It's just-
Yep.
Also,
Also-
Peter's jacket is back again.
Also, he's talking about Quasimodo and the gargoyles because Notre Dame, obviously. But like, if this issue was produced like 22 years later, it would have definitely been a shitty reference to the Disney movie.
Oh, without a doubt.
Which I think
I
that's
just love Spider-Man's little drop down though with the briefcase, and he's like,
yeah. That's a good like.
that's good.
Those few panels are a quick good gag.
Yeah.
Nice Parker wit. I mean, the splash page with Cyclone, like it's kind of a flashy splash page, but like also not much is happening. This fight is pretty boring.
yeah.
And it like that splash page might have been cooler if Cyclone's costume wasn't the worst costume I've ever seen.
Yeah. I want to know exactly. I want to see his receipt from the hardware store.
Yeah.
How much of the ransom money he used to make that?
It was,
Does that play more into our Peter Parker is financially irresponsible?
Now the
Even
question
ransom
is,
money,
did
it's
he?
fine.
Because I don't think he has this money to buy all this hardware. So was he taking it from the ransom money, or is he putting it on like a Daily Bugle expense account? Like, is Jonah gonna have to write off a bunch of hardware
It's
parts
definitely
for Spidey building a fan to rescue him.
the ransom was in stocks, so it's definitely expense.
Yeah.
Well,
I would have
also,
liked
we
to
didn't
see a
talk about the
diagram.
fact that Peter hides his identity by keeping a microphone and a recording of his voice up in the rafters
Yep.
to make it look like Spider-Man and Peter Parker were both there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that Dan Slott is leaving Spider-Man because what I think he should do is an arc where Peter Parker goes to a professional ventriloquist and learns how to project his voice, because I think he would save on a lot of time and effort and money. Again, we were talking about his irresponsibility.
Yeah.
Just learning ventriloquism. He wouldn't have to deal with these kinds of things.
That seems like something Chip Zdarsky would do, not Dan Slott.
True. Oh, wait. I want to go back to one of these Aunt May sequences. I think it's in this issue.
Okay.
Because there's a important Aunt May line to dig up. Okay, yeah.
Oh, where she said it should have been her?
Yes. She says, "Why do the young people die, Anna, while we
Yeah.
old women go on and on? Sometimes I think it should have been me, not that dear girl. I've lived my life." Which, I mean, meta-wise, that goes back to Death of Gwen Stacy, because we talked about how initially they were thinking maybe of killing May. But then looking to the future, obviously you can look at that in the context of One More Day, where it's like, you know, the whole premise of that is, oh, Aunt May's really, really fucked up this time. And so we're going to do some real bullshit thing so that she's fine. And obviously that's even sliding timescale. The events of One More Day have got to be at the bare minimum like 5 years after the events of this. So she's pushing her age.
5.
Right. At that point, he's pushing 200.
Yeah, I'm saying like sliding timescale. I think technically the Marvel
I'd say
universe,
10.
the Marvel universe between Fantastic Four #1 and Secret Wars, a lot of people say it's 15 years. And so at this point, we're actually like the very end of year 3. I'm pretty sure is like about when Gwen dies and then the clone stuff.
I don't know, it feels like by the time we get to JMS that like Peter's at least like 28.
Yeah. Well, again, the timeline's fucked, but like, do we
Well,
see him
we'll
go
get to that
through?
later with the timeline in this story, because later on it's implied that it's been months since Gwen's death, and then when we get to the penultimate issue, Jackal says 2 years.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
doesn't work at all. And so yeah, he defeats Cyclone, saves the day.
If you want to read more Cyclone, I recommend Spectacular Spider-Man 22 and 23, which features a team up with Spider-Man and Moon Knight as they take on Cyclone.
Wow.
For all you fans out there.
That sounds
Oh,
exciting.
you only know that because Moon Knight is your guy.
It's in the Epic Collection.
So we return, and Pete learns that May's in the hospital because she's freaking out.
Mhm.
And then we see that Gwen is in his apartment.
Again, people just hanging out in Pete's apartment.
Yeah.
Empty apartment.
Does Anna have like keys to her her niece's quasi boyfriend's apartment? Like,
I feel
because
like Peter
Peter
doesn't lock the door.
No, but that's the thing. Earlier in the issue, Peter says something like, I think it's when he goes to the Jackal's mansion or something, where he's like, not this issue, but he says something like, "Oh, no one leaves their door unlocked in Manhattan."
Yeah.
So like,
Unless you're Peter Parker.
so Gwen's alive, sort of. Now here's an interesting thing. I'll mention this now. I'm not totally sure which issue this appeared in, but in one of the letters pages along this run, like around this time, a lot of the letters were speculating on who the Jackal was. And a letter from someone named John Ostrander, who may or may not be the comic book writer John Ostrander. I don't think anyone's ever asked him to confirm this letter.
We'll tweet him
but John Ostrander questioned whether the Jackal was a clone of Peter Parker.
Ooh.
Oh.
Before the reveal. And a lot of people, I think the prevailing theory was that the Jackal was Norman Osborn somehow. Which, I mean, the Jackal pretty much is a stand-in for Norman in a lot of ways. Like, until he gets more development later on, like, he has the whole green thing. He has whole cackling laugh and manipulating Peter's life. But then also, and I don't know if some of this was shown in like his previous appearances, like that one with the Punisher, but like it's also like implied that the Jackal is like this major thing in like the crime of New York, which otherwise like you don't get that impression, especially given like his like primary motivation and everything like that. Like, why does he care about like being a mob boss essentially? But whatever. So then we move into 145.
Scorpion story.
Mm-hmm.
And this issue and the one that follows it, like he said, mostly there are 2 arcs. This Scorpion story is basically why I am personally not a huge fan of the Scorpion and why I think he's kind of a joke, because he is.
I love the opening page with Peter like bugging out.
Yeah.
It's like Spider-Man's yelling at him.
He also says, where is it? He threatens to punch Gwen in the mouth.
Yeah.
Which is
Because
hilarious.
Peter Parker's an asshole.
You're lucky I don't belt you in the mouth, sister. What if Peter Parker punched the Gwen Stacy clone in the mouth?
It's not violence if it's a clone, so.
And you just see a panel of her like on the ground, just blood leaking out of her mouth.
It's still a poor clone. Like, geez, this girl doesn't even know anything about her. It's awful.
It's traumatic. Yeah. It's traumatic.
Well, it's not. We don't totally get that it's a clone yet, but like, whatever. We haven't really mentioned in pretty much, I think almost all these issues, we get to see the Spider-Man backpack, which I've always liked.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really do that much now, right?
I've not seen it for a very long time.
Because like I guess they just explain his like costume change slightly differently now.
I guess. I mean, I think eventually someone decided, like, you know, all these images of Spider-Man with his big web pack on his back just looks odd, but
I think it's awesome.
I'm a fan of it.
So then we get to Scorpion, Mac Gargan, and I fucking love this. So he gets out of prison, and he gets out of prison for model behavior. Like, apparently he was like fucking perfect in prison.
Yeah.
He's just waiting his time. But as soon as he gets out, he's like, I'm going back to what I do best, crime.
I'm putting on this dumb green costume again.
But like, I hope that's
saying this like almost as he leaves the station. The cops are like, "We can hear you."
Like, I like to imagine like 75% of like the villains in the Marvel universe are like this, where like when they get to prison, they're like saints as when they're in prison, and then that's why they get out like 2 months later, and then they go right back into it.
Very interesting what happens is it stops and it's like, hey, as Spider-Man's on the side of this building, Marvel Team Up number 33 happens.
Yeah. In between panels. In that issue, he was hanging out with Nighthawk of the Defenders. And I think they were fighting, I think he mentions it here, they're fighting some like dumb villain.
I'm sure.
And he says like Nighthawk was trying to be nice to him and give him friendship, and he threw it back in his face.
Yeah. I mean, he does have other things on his mind, but like,
it's so funny.
See, I like to joke that Spider-Man's a dick, but his track record over the course of this story is making me actually think about definitely consider changing my mind about it.
He has some mild dickish tendencies, but traumatic moments of his entire life. You know?
That's not an excuse. Because Gwen died months ago. Or 2 years ago.
She died in the past.
That's in the past.
Scorpion, he's also pretty daring, making a bank robbery during daylight.
Well,
I mean-
they explain it. I was wondering about this. He does it right at the beginning of the day.
I mean, I guess it does make sense. I guess it's like dealing with people versus probably dealing with like more defenses. I don't know.
No, I thought I had the same thoughts you are. I was like, oh, okay. Like hitting them there would be okay. It would be unexpected. Okay, I can buy it.
The Scorpion's mask looks awkward. Like they hadn't totally figured out how to make his face look menacing.
Mm-hmm.
It just like he has like the like domino mask cut out and then for his mouth, and he's like this wrinkly old dude, so he just looks like a weirdo.
Yeah.
I like this like full page memories thing where he's like, oh, what happened to Gwen? And then they touch on Harry Green Goblin here as well.
Right. His weird little nightmare in the hospital.
Yeah. So he's just checking on Aunt May. He fights the Scorpion.
Well, Vince, I'm going to send you something here because I'm wondering when the Scorpion wore this costume, and we can talk about that later. But it's like this really, it's like early 2000s. Like I'm wondering when he got that makeover.
I'm not really sure. Well, yeah. And the Scorpion thinks he's defeated him by throwing him into a like cement vat.
Yeah, so he just leaves.
Yeah, the Scorpion's just like bye, and then
He just climbs out.
I don't really understand how Pete got out either, because like I thought the whole idea of the cement of like throwing him in the cement vat and like letting the water in was that it was going to turn into cement and become solid.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I don't know.
I mean, it just says 8 minutes later he climbs out. He just
So
does.
like 8 minutes, whatever.
He can hold his breath a long time.
And then, well, I'm not talking his breath. I'm talking like everything hardening around him and him being encased in cement. But then he goes back to the Bugle and everyone's there, and Ned Leeds quickly says, "Oh yeah, we did some tests." And we don't get the clone word right yet.
No.
But she has the exact same fingerprints.
And there's a body in Gwen's grave.
Yeah.
So there's 2 Gwen Stacy's.
Well, at some point Ned does say clone.
Yeah, I think that's
later.
later on when he and Peter do some investigation. But he says there's a grave in the body, but then this is the real Gwen Stacy. But like when you just said there are 2 Gwen Stacys, I don't know how he's so confident to say this is the real one. I mean, I guess it's not an imposter, but and I mean Gwen is freaking out just as much as everyone else, understandably.
Yeah.
And I like MJ in this last panel where she's like, "Fuck, the dead girl's back." And then moving into 146, this opening panel, this is probably going to be the thumbnail.
The jackal.
Where the jackal has like a little statue of Spider-Man's head, and then he smashes it. So like, did he make this himself or did he buy it? Because like, Spider-Man's not too popular with the public at this point, so like, I don't know who's making like Spider-Man statues.
He cloned it. It's an actual skull.
Yeah.
I love how he dances with it, throws it on the ground, and then laughs.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is where he says he's been planning it for 2 years. So, I guess since the day you committed murder. So apparently it's been 2 years since Gwen's death.
Yeah, that's
By the way,
that's
Peter
complete
Parker's
bullshit.
bandages are gone in this issue.
What was that?
Peter Parker's bandages are now gone by this issue.
Okay, yeah. Also, Matt, I don't know if yours said this. It probably did, but on this opening page, we also get a little note that says that this issue marks the 3rd year of Jerry Conway's run on Spider-Man.
It does, yeah.
And we'll get back to that in a little bit, in like 2 issues. But it also says, wait till you see the note in Thor 240, because I believe he started on Thor before Spider-Man, and he had a run on Daredevil, which is over by this point, but that also predated his Spider-Man. But
Okay.
I went and checked. Thor 240 is not written by Jerry Conway.
Whoops.
Conway's last Thor issue was 238. And we'll get into this as we go on a few more issues, but I don't really know what was going on with like Conway's like career at Marvel as a whole at this point, because
I know that his last Spider-Man issue is I don't know. I think the publication date is October of '75, and then his first DC work is November of '75.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that, because I don't think that actually has a correlation that much.
Okay.
Which I'll get back to that. But with Thor, I dug around a little bit, and so Conway writes 238, and it involves Ulik, who's like a Thor villain, and the end of 238 is in the middle of an arc. So then Roy Thomas comes in to write 239 and 240 to finish Conway's arc, which that makes it even weirder to me. Like, you have to finish up the arc, which that also kind of happens here, which we'll get to. But then Thomas literally just finished that arc, and then I think the next Thor writer was like Bill Mantlo or something boring. Yeah, so we see the Jackal being a weirdo. I think he's gotten dark. I think his green has gotten darker over the course of these issues.
It
Yeah, the
has.
phone isn't the same color.
Gwen is wearing a slightly different outfit, but she might have just taken off her jacket.
Right.
I like how she jumps right to kissing Peter, and then
Yeah.
and then she says, "You do still love me, don't you?" And
Against him on that one.
pumping up the drama. And then I love Pete, where he's like, he walks outside, he's like, ah!
Yeah.
He's like, fuck. How do I deal with this shit?
We get like a classic Spider-Man changing in an alley shot then, with him looking over his shoulder, make sure no one sees him.
Yeah, I always see it like he's like, I don't know, what does he do if he gets caught?
He just says,
Web 'em.
"This costume I found on the ground, I'm trying on."
Knowing
Give
how
him
Peter
$5.
Parker acts, yeah, web him.
I would be like, I'm not Spider-Man. It's just a sex thing. Like I'm going to an exclusive costume party.
I'm going to this costume party. We're all dressing up like superheroes. So
the Scorpion busts in some random mob boss's house. I don't think this guy a big deal. I don't think he is. I think he's probably just for this issue.
I like when the Scorpion.
Antonio. I've never heard of him before. So
Antonio.
Yeah, I like when the Scorpion busts in through the hospital window of Aunt May's bedroom.
Yeah. So
yeah,
the Scorpion trying to be a mob boss, and then he meets up with the Jackal.
Yeah, because he realizes that Spider-Man's not actually dead.
Spidey goes to Scorpion's house, and then the Scorpion makes a move on Aunt May.
This image of Scorpion bursting through the window of Aunt May's room is my mental image of the Scorpion. Just first of all, he looks terrified himself.
It's kind of like a musical opening, where like a musical entrance, where it's like, "It's me, the Scorpion."
And he's
it looks like he was gonna make the jump, and he's surprised he landed it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I like how he like fully gets on the bed and like straddles Aunt May to like get information out of her. And then he's like, Peter, and then he tells Peter, he's like, fuck off, kid.
He's like, Spider-Man's supposed to be in this room, but it's clearly not this guy.
Yeah. So at this point, Jackal knows who Peter is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has to have. Yeah.
And then
yeah.
obviously Peter has to go change. So while Peter's changing, I love the idea that Scorpion like just goes and busts down like a dozen doors.
This sequence is hilarious.
15
I don't think it's supposed to be. I don't think this is supposed to be as funny as it is.
You bust down door,
Scorpion-
Spider-Man.
He just going door to door, knocking them down. And I
Wait,
love.
no. He tries to use a key on one of them,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't work, so he just rips the door off.
And then it might have been the previous issue, but I think it's here where like Spidey's getting quippy, and Mac is just like, stop, you're being mean. He's like, stop. But I mean, Spidey's going in on him. Get some nice, like, full width of the page, like punches.
I'd say this fight is a lot more entertaining and even more entertaining to look at than the Everything in Paris.
Yes, like the whole hospital bit is hilarious, but the fight itself is a lot more dynamic than anything he did with Cyclone.
And that's not like we talked about Ross Andrew. I was messaging you earlier today. Is Ross Andrew underrated? Maybe
I think so.
His pencils in this aren't. His pencils, like even going back to the Paris stuff, they're fantastic. But just I think this is far better.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's definitely not talked about as much as like other major Spider-Man artists. He had like a really, really long run on Wonder Woman in the Silver Age. That was like his major thing before this.
Mm-hmm.
We also get a Johnny Carson reference dating this book. And I don't...
The Johnny Carson reference.
He says, that's the thing is he's making fun of Scorpion. He says, with dialogue like that, you could write for Johnny Carson. After all, somebody should. So like,
okay,
is Jerry Conway digging on Carson?
That. All right, wow.
Yeah, during the fight, is Jerry Conway trying to like talk shit on Johnny Carson? Kind of gotta ask him about that too.
Well, I guess this is like what? This is what 74, 75? This is like prime years for Carson.
Who was the guy before Carson? Do you remember?
No, I don't think there was anyone before Carson.
No, there were like three guys before. But whatever. Conway may have been well, the thing is, Conway's still like really young, so whatever. Who knows?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like 1974, like that's prime years for Johnny Carson.
Yeah. And we get a King Kong joke, but it's not the Empire State Building; it's the Chrysler Building.
Yeah, and then Pete just throws the Scorpion off the Chrysler Building.
Yeah.
And hopes he grabs on later.
Yeah, and the Scorpion just yells, "Help!"
Yeah.
No.
And then he says, "I don't want to fall. Just let me fall."
He barely.
And then he goes and pushes him again. Like he throws him off the building twice.
By the way, the Chrysler Building much cooler than the Empire State Building,
but not as cool as the Twin Towers.
And then I like how he like forces Scorpion to go apologize to Aunt May.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
But like, how does he?
You should be ashamed of yourself, young man. I haven't a very high opinion of Spider-Man, but at least he has manners.
The thing is, I'm also questioning this. So like, because Peter's changed. So either Spider-Man gave him to the cops and told the cops, "Oh yeah, he has to real quick come say sorry to this woman." But like, the cops don't like Spidey, so I don't know why they would be like, "Oh yeah, sure, let's do that." Or is Scorpion like, as soon as he gets arrested, like Spidey told him to then ask the cops so that he could go apologize? Like, I don't know. I want to know how that worked out. I like the idea of Scorpion, like he gets in cuffs and then he's like, "Guys, I know this is weird, but I kind of have to go say sorry to this old woman real quick. Can you just escort me up there? Yeah, so then we have another quick intermission for giant-sized Spider-Man number 5,
Yes.
which is the last time we'll have one of these here. This one features Man-Thing, and they fight the Lizard, kind of. And I always like...
And a man has Dan McNamara's hairline.
Yeah, I always like the dynamic between... Is she his wife, right? The Scorpion and his wife?
Yes.
I always like that dynamic. If in a good Lizard story, I mean, I think I accidentally said Scorpion 10 seconds ago, but in a good Lizard story, like that dynamic can go a long way, I think, because it's kind of like that. You can make it like that Beauty and the Beast kind of thing, but she doesn't really do anything in this story. Honestly,
she comes at him with a hose. It's kind of something.
Yeah. I mostly skimmed this. There are just like 2-3 pages. There are 2 pages which are somewhat relevant, where Peter goes and back to his apartment. I think, yeah, and he has a quick conversation with Gwen. And this is it. It's actually pretty important because this is where we see that Gwen, like, basically she has a gap in her memory, where this, like, again, they use this 2 years thing, which doesn't work at all. Which I think it probably is that there was exactly 2 years between this and the issue in real time.
I think so.
Because then they can make this thing. They can do this topical reference about how Gwen is watching TV and she doesn't recognize Gerald Ford as the new president, so that she can explain her memory gap. But the 2 years thing doesn't work, and that's about it. And then Peter's like, "Okay, I gotta go now," or whatever. But
and before that, there's a sequence where MJ is on the phone. She tries to call Peter, and Pete isn't really talking to her. Yeah. Which it kind of sets up her, arc later on. But beyond that, not much really significant happens in this.
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah. There's like 3 panels where MJ's with Anna. And you actually kind of see the return of the kind of that MJ that we saw before she closed the door in the Gwen Stacy story, where she turns around and to Aunt Anna, she's like, "Oh no, I'm MJ. Nothing makes me feel down or anything like that. Like, I'm perfectly fine. Everything's cheery." Which that's kind of interesting in this story where like Pete's getting distracted and stuff like that. But that's pretty much all I read. Matt, do you want to real quickly touch on the main story, because I just mostly skipped it?
I mean, it's there's not too much to it. There's a depressed man who's going to kill himself, and the Man-Thing saves him from a crocodile. And then the Lizard shows up, and Spider-Man fights the Lizard, and the Man-Thing fights the Lizard. That's kind of cool. Like, there's a cool splash page where the Man-Thing grabs the Lizard by his tail, and then they win, and the Man-Thing goes away, and Spider-Man's like, I wonder who he was, and that's really it.
I think the Lizard should just be a good guy at this point.
I'd rather see that than what they did with him, but
Lizard's kind of messed up. Didn't he eat his son somewhat?
Yes, he ate his son. I don't like Shed. I mean, for a number of reasons. I don't like that he ate his son. That's...
No, I mean, who...
Oh, why'd he eat his son?
Get into it.
Because he's a monster now. And he was always a monster. Kurt was the monster. The Lizard is Kurt, and with the...
Yeah, I don't like...
But Jerry Conway did actually write the first appearance of the Man-Thing. And then eventually Steve Gerber made him like a serious deal. But then we can move on to 147, where how does this villain rank among the others that we've laughed at so far?
The Tarantula?
I think Tarantula is better than most of the villains Conway has made.
He has a cool sequence of breaking out of jail, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the
with his pointy shoes.
The bus sequence isn't until... No, it is this issue.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
I like the Tarantula. I think his costume design is great.
Yeah.
And he just has like a slightly weird gimmick. But mostly just like if he just like was really like if he was like a kickboxer or some shit like Batroc, like whatever.
I could sell it.
But the pointy shoes are kind of funny, especially like I think it's later on, but there's one panel where it's like in the dark and some light is like lighting the bottom of his legs and his feet. And for like a second, if you just looked at the panel in isolation, you would assume that it was a woman wearing heels. So like occasionally, depending on how you draw him, Tarantula does not look very threatening.
No.
I'll say this as a kid, because this is the first time I've actually ever read a story with Tarantula in it. I always thought the Tarantula looked cool as a kid.
Yeah, he has a great costume.
I love his design.
I like the costume. It's a cool costume.
It's a really cool costume. You got the Tarantula design going all over the costume. He's got that cool like bandana blindfold thing going on where his eyes are just black.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really like the idea of like the poison tipped boots. Like it's a good look.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's just kind of an assassin.
The other thing, so obviously this is not the first Tarantula story.
No.
Why would the prison allow him to work in the shoe shop? That seems like a major oversight.
What's he doing? Oh, he's filing
Because
down.
he's on his best behavior, just like Scorpion.
Well, that's what I was saying. He should. I mean, should he have just taken the Scorpion tactic and just been a model prisoner and then gotten out early?
He's impatient.
Yeah. The other thing is he's like escaping prison and he like kicks a guard and he's like, oh, well, I don't have my poison yet, but knocking him out will have to do. But like those things are pointy. Like he definitely stabbed that guard through the chest.
He's dead. He's dead.
But the prison escape's good. I don't.
Yeah.
Like. Also, I feel like prison screen letters. How did he and the Jackal get to conversing and plan this perfect escape?
He could have sent the letters as Miles Warren.
Yeah, I guess. But I feel like the prison would be like, who the hell is Miles Warren?
No, he definitely wrote the Jackal on the envelope, on the return address.
No, it has Miles Warren, and that's crossed out. Then it says the Jackal, that's crossed out again, and then you see like the M and the I that crossed out, and then it just says Jackal.
Yeah.
And then this we have MJ hanging out with Aunt May and her own aunt, and this is a pretty important sequence again, because Aunt May is basically like, you gotta fight for your man. And she's like, okay. The last panel on this one page, like, is MJ like yelling at Aunt May?
She's just passionate.
Yeah, I think she is.
Because based on like, especially like the coloring, there's like orange like around her and everything. And I feel like Aunt May should have been like, calm down a little bit and then proceed.
Well, in the next panel, we see that Aunt May is clearly full on dementia, where her mind is clearly wandering to other things.
Well, I like this little shot of Uncle Ben in his younger days.
Yeah.
He was such a shy young man.
I like I like that Ned Leeds just gives Peter the thing that it just says laboratory report on it.
Yeah. So now we know that this Gwen is literally a clone.
Yeah.
Right, because they did a lab report and the lab said clone.
Yeah.
I guess.
They finally used the word clone.
Then Spider-Man punches the mirror because he sees Gwen coming out of it, and then two officers come up and be like, Spider-Man, you punched that mirror!
Yeah, I love this. This is another example of Public Menace Spider-Man. And you see on this one panel, he just busts up this entire storefront. Like,
he destroyed it.
He's like Eric Andre in that skit where he's the sign waver and he just crashes through everything.
Yeah. I think he broke the entire glass storefront, then jumped in, and then broke this mirror. And so that's easily, I mean, the glass plus that mirror is probably an expensive piece. But even just the storefront glass, like for an entire storefront, I mean, I don't know, like the conversion and stuff, but like that's $100 of
That's a
repair.
lot of bad luck, right?
Well, I'm sure he would have webbed a few
here.
dollars. I'm sure he would have webbed a few dollars down, but the tarantula showed up. So for the tarantula.
The other thing is, if it weren't for the tarantula, how does he get out of this situation? He's very close to those cops.
He just knocks the cops
He's
out.
just gonna assault them again.
Yeah, I mean,
He assaults more officers.
yeah. But tarantula shows up and tactically poisons both the cops.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, I mean, I guess it depends on how much force he puts into his kicks. But the tarantula is not a very lethal villain. I mean, I guess it also depends on what poison he's using.
Do you think he trips a lot?
It's comfortable to walk in because his boots have heels on them too.
Yeah.
He probably practices. He walks around his apartment at home.
Wearing a dress, practicing in heels.
That's an Achilles injury waiting to happen. That's all I'm saying.
I like this splash page where we get one of those multiple Spider-Mans flying through the air.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool
And then
fact.
they land on this car, and this taxi cab, they're like, "Hey, should you be concerned about that?" And he's like, this happens all the time in New York. And then he's like, "God damn it, my radiator, Spider-Man, you fix this."
Yeah, I actually like these next several pages where like we see different kinds of people reacting to like the superheroics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just the fight, the traffic itself, I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Our buddy Drew makes a special cameo appearance.
Yep. Wait, is his name Drew? No, but Drew's
it might as well be.
Oh yeah. So is he Jewish or is he just wearing a hat? That's a yarmulke, right?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Okay.
He's Jewish.
And his black friend with glasses is named Bernie. And so they're like hype as shit. They're like, "Oh shit, it's Spider-Man." But my favorite one is definitely the old dude on the bus who's just minding his own business with his newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, if I just don't,
Very
if I
quiet, will just disappear.
yeah. And then later when he gets off the bus, he's like, "I'm gonna go home and I'm going right to sleep."
Yep.
Like I like the idea that he's not like he has like this is during the morning and he's like going to work. And he's like not even gonna call in.
Just going home.
The next day, like he might be fired, but the next day he's gonna come into work and be like, "Spider-Man got on my bus." So I just
Damn, you were 3 days from retirement. We got to delay this now. Like,
but I'm also thinking like, why is there anyone on this bus? Like
Because the Jackal's really devoted to role playing a bus driver.
the panel where the Jackal. Well, here's the best thing about this panel because we know that the Jackal mask is also a mask. So
Yeah. He pulled the mask.
Under a mask.
was wearing two
amazing.
masks.
It's great.
But like it's very reminiscent of like Jim Carrey the mask as he pulls the bus driver mask off and it's him underneath.
I've only seen some of the masks, so I'm not familiar.
It looks like Jim Carrey. I mean, like 20 years before that movie came out, but like it looks like Jim Carrey.
Nick,
The
if you want to
Jackal-
get into the mask, the comics are better.
Comics are weird, actually. They're very different.
They're like super violent.
I like on the back of the bus it just says "Read the Daily Bugle," so
Yeah.
maybe Jameson's paying for some advertising.
No, I like the idea
Jackal's
that the
helping him out.
Jackal went through like a whole route before they got Spidey.
Yeah.
The Jackal is the most method actor.
Now the question is, what do they do with all those fares when they get to the bridge? Like, does he break open the little fare box and take all the money from the bus?
It was funding to create his spider clone.
Yeah.
But then he stops.
And Riley was created with bus money.
Everyone gets off the bus, and Gwen gets on, and just ignores him.
Yeah.
Yep.
The taking off the mask panel is great though.
It's so good.
Like I said, it's amazing.
Okay, and then he hits a car and it flips upside down and spins on its top. That one car that he hits with
Like a
the bus,
cartoon.
and it's
And the people inside, like, they seem fine.
I
Yeah.
told you to move the car, George.
They're like, oh no, not again.
It's
I
almost
think,
it's almost like the end of a Seinfeld episode. The way that sequence plays out there.
yeah, I think Matt was actually talking about this earlier, where this is like this weird example of comedy,
Mhm.
and I don't think this part works. Like,
No,
I
it's
laugh,
not.
it's funny, but it doesn't work.
No, it's funny for like the wrong reasons.
So out of place.
Yeah.
Also, look at the sound effect while the car is spinning upside down.
Swoot, swoot.
Swoot, swoot. And then this is an important part. What bridge are they at?
They're at the
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Yep.
So Conway does not know what he's doing.
Well, no, I think this is the
No, 'cause
point
it's
where
supposed to be-
they're like, oh, Gil Kane fucked up, so let's just call it the Brooklyn Bridge from now on. And I think they
Right.
stuck with that for a while until like once you got to like the third time they were reprinting the stories, they're like, let's just keep it how it originally was, and then everything's fucked.
Basically.
So they go up on the bridge. I like how, and for a while, or for like 2 panels, the Jackal, he took his bus driver mask off, but he still got the suit on.
Yeah. I was literally just about to comment on that. It's great.
And the Jackal in the
they-
suit is awesome.
But when they're all up on
Jack
top,
is always in a suit.
he's stripped.
Yeah, I love like where. Well, when did he strip? Did he strip on the top of the bridge and then just throw the clothes off?
Yeah, probably.
He must have stripped when Spider-Man got knocked out and they went up to the bridge.
Yeah, I like to
Yeah.
think he got up to the bridge, then threw all the clothes down, just to be
Really
able to-
dramatically, like,
Yeah.
you know?
But he's got his little underwear. He kept his little underwear.
We have to. Modesty.
Still a suit. There's nothing to see there.
We don't know that, do we? Do we know that?
He probably
balls on the costume.
he probably added furry. Yeah. Is the
It's
costume furry?
Little do we. Well, this is the '70s, and the
He's
bush
definitely-
was in. Little do we know, it actually just is Miles Ward's bush, and that's why he does
Yeah.
have to cover it up.
Yes.
No, yeah, the Jackal is definitely a furry.
Okay, I think so.
So Spidey gets thrown off the bridge.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a bridge hanger there, right? Because he's not on a cliff.
Sure.
And it's
and
all
then-
tied up in chains. So how's he gonna escape this one? Gotta do some
know.
Houdini.
So
Imagine the series gets canceled, and then that's the last issue.
So we move into 148, and the cover is like literally the last page of the last issue, just slightly different.
Yep.
Also, I feel like the coloring on the Jackal's underwear is inconsistent. Like sometimes
It
it's
is.
exactly the
Sometimes
same color as his.
sometimes it's a different
fur.
shade.
Sometimes it has like stuff that hangs down, like a loincloth, and sometimes it's just underwear.
Yeah.
Maybe he just changes it up.
So Spidey manages to shoot out a web, and he's like swinging. And then before we come back to Spidey, we see the Jackal's escape, which
I
this
love
is
this.
ridiculous.
It's insane. It's insane.
It's amazing.
All right, Nick, how does the Jackal escape?
So it turns out that he hid a portable jetpack in Gwen's coat. So he takes her coat off, and then you just see all these little components attached on the inside, and he builds a jetpack. And then he gives it to
He puts on Tarantula.
yeah, he puts it on Tarantula, so Tarantula carries them away.
Well, and Tarantula's like, but this jetpack has no fuel. Like, no, I thought of that. Looking curse. There's the fuel. And then Tarantula grabs both of them.
And like the panel of him just blasting away with both of them is so good.
Now,
Like,
The
the
cops
Tarantula,
are coming up and they're like, "You hold it there."
Tarantula
but
doesn't have
then
like he doesn't have
I
like
think Spidey's escape might be funnier to
Why
me.
is the tarantula flying sitting down?
he doesn't have like any enhanced strength, right? So it's just how is he supporting them?
It's the momentum.
Down, it makes no sense.
All right, so
Okay, yeah, Spidey's is pretty great too.
It is.
the cops show up, And one of the cops is like, "Oh, should we unmask him?" And whoever's in charge is like, "Nah, we gotta save that for TV."
TV.
And this like third panel where you see the guy like explaining his master plan to become this high-ranking cop / celebrity. He got this great smile. And then he's like, "Oh, we gotta also unchain him because if he's in chains, then it makes us look weak on TV."
You gotta think about appearances.
Yeah, then it turns out he was plain dead. He wasn't actually unconscious.
I just love, like, we didn't talk about it, but, like, this great heroic moment for Spider-Man. He gets that web off and then just smacks his face.
Just hanging there.
Yeah, he reaches out with all 4 limbs and knocks people out.
And then you get a sad man walk back to Mary Jane, who's waiting on his stoop, and just Peter's just like, I have no time for this.
Yeah.
Also, the cops have Tommy guns, which I'd have to look into the historical accuracy of that. It's kind of crazy that they're using Thompsons in like 1974.
Right.
A gun from like the 1920s. But yeah, he shows up back to MJ and just like she just gets fucked, not literally.
The door literally slammed in her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he regrets it immediately, but she's already gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Knowing how Peter Parker runs his apartment, that door's probably open. What's stopping her from walking in?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That door definitely not locked.
Now, this next part, also hilarious.
Yeah.
Peter
The
Parker.
rope?
No, just him taking a bath.
Oh.
Peter Parker takes a bath to relax. And he says, and the caption is like, "Listen, some people bet on horses, other people take baths." Like, this is like Peter's ultimate way to unwind.
Yep.
It's not the first time I've seen Peter Parker take a bath in a comic book.
And then Ned shows up, and I love how he still has like a bunch of bubbles on him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
drew in the bubbles. I don't think he bothered to dry off at all. He jumped
No,
right out the
totally
tub
just
and put on.
jumped out.
Oh, because he thought it was MJ. He's like, MJ, look, I'm in my robe. Oh, it's Ned. I'm in my robe.
Ned's
What's
like,
coffee?
can you please put some pants on? But yeah, I'll take some cream with my coffee. Please.
See, look, coffee's bolted. Is he asking for coffee?
Oh, true.
Coffee, tea, Mary Conway, what are you getting into? Cream is also bolted. Oh,
Ooh,
subtext.
cream.
Cut it.
So Ned is like, "Oh yeah." Basically, just thinking about it, I think she's not the real Gwen. She's like a messed up clone, whatever.
Mhm.
And then, what does Ned go do?
They go together to.
Oh no, yeah, okay.
Go to talk to Miles Warren.
Yeah.
They talk to Miles, and I like how like at first, like it seems like Miles is like kind of thinks they're onto him because he knows who Peter is. So
Yeah.
he's like, "Talk to me in my office hours,"
Right.
and they're like, "Nah."
Peter's like, this don't concern your office hours. It's totally concerns your office hours. Like, I feel like you might have had some tissue, like, you know those DNA samples that you took of me and my dead girlfriend? Where are those?
And so Miles blames it on his like weird ass looking assistant.
Anthony Serba.
Yeah.
That's an evil name.
And
so Ned
then
and Peter split up.
but what is Ned gonna do?
Ned is going to the Bugle to look for
Oh,
Gwen.
yeah. All right. So Ned's gonna see if he can find Gwen.
And then Peter's going to
And-
find
I
Serba.
love this in the dark fight sequence with the train.
Yeah, this sequence is awesome.
It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Matt, at some point you should definitely check out the color version of this. It is
Okay.
really cool because
It
of
is
the
so
lighting
cool.
of like the spider signal.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah.
And then like one of these panels, like I said, it's just a spider signal lighting up like Tarantula's legs, and it just looks like he's wearing heels. And like the design on his boots too, it almost looks like he has like these like real fancy looking heels and or like the beginnings of maybe like some stockings or something.
It looks like he's wearing platformed heel shoes, and like the spikes are just an attachment. That's
Yeah.
what it looked
That might be.
So they have this cool fight in the dark for like a few pages, and then they fight outside. And
like. Also, guys, enjoy Blatt's beer.
Yeah,
Blatt's
he gets
beer-
stuck in a billboard.
Blatt's beer is
Blatt's beer-
it's a real brand of beer.
I was just gonna ask that. It
Really?
actually is.
Yeah, I looked it up. It was like independent. I think it was still independent at this point, but then it was bought out by, I don't know. Like I think Pabst, whoever owns Pabst.
It had to be because they're based. I'm looking it up right now. They
Yeah,
were
they're-
based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It produced Blatt's beer from 1851 until 1959 when the label was sold to Pabst Brewing Company. Yep.
And
now it's
then
produced by Miller Brewing Company.
And
and
then the
this
translate
gag
clutch
is
is
awesome.
great. When he puts it into the water tower.
Yeah. So then the water flows out of the top of the beer.
Yeah, I
And
like that.
then-
Nice sploosh sound
That's
effect.
good. It does make a sploosh sound effect.
Sploosh.
And then we get someone sneaking up on Spider-Man, which is important.
Yeah, and this
And
time,
knock him out
well, it says this.
again.
I don't know. It says the spider sense warns him here, but then I don't know. He still gets hit.
I think the
Yeah, it's
implied
like, it's
thing.
like halfway.
Yeah.
Right, it warned him, but definitely way too late.
Wouldn't go off because he knows Miles Warren's friendly, so therefore he doesn't know that the Jackal's behind him because,
It is Miles.
like I said, trying to figure out the spider sense it makes no sense.
Yeah. So the Jackal is Miles Warren.
Which
Whoa.
must have been. I mean, like you're talking about people speculating: is it Norman? Is it a clone of Peter? Find out it's the Jackal. Find out it's Miles Warren. That must have been more disappointing than the Mixie twist in Superman Reborn, which I
Yeah.
liked. But
I mean, to be fair, Miles Warren has been like a semi-recurring thing in Spider-Man, even
He's
before this arc.
Not enough that he's even on your radar. It comes out of so far left field, I feel.
So then the cover of the next issue, 149, like totally gives away what happens in the issue, or at least like one of the major things.
149 is Jerry Conway's last issue, right?
yes,
Yeah. So
because then R.T. Goodwin writes 150.
Which, by the way, I love the cover of 149. It's awesome.
It is great.
Yeah, Spider-Man or Spider-Man.
Even if I die, even if I live, I die.
I mean, the cover's great and like it makes sense, but like I almost feel like would you save that there's going to be a second Spider-Man for the issue itself?
I mean, you
Uh,
probably should. It is framed as a sort of twist.
This was the era of like having the eye-catching cover, so
Yeah.
And well, my eye is caught.
yeah, like I feel like if you were just you kind of like it was very hard to try to like read issue to issue back in this era.
Mhm.
So like if like you knew if you liked Spider-Man but didn't like quite get every issue, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? That definitely is eye-catching enough where you want to pick it up.
Yeah. So this issue has like a full page, like what is it called? Like a full page catch up thing, like
Recap?
since last issue. Yeah, recap. Fuck, I couldn't think of the word. And I don't know why, because like most of these issues, especially when it's like in one of these like mini arcs, they usually have 1 or 2 pages of recap. But for some reason, like this page, I was just like, oh, I know all this. I kind of skipped that page, honestly.
Yeah.
The most notable thing in the credits page is that Marv Wolfman, not Len Wein, is now the editor of Marvel Comics.
Yeah, so I'll get to that in towards the end because there's some we can go into that. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
So I like the Jackal has him tied down, but then like didn't think it through at all. Spider-Man very easily escapes his bonds,
Uh-huh.
and then somehow Jackal puts up a fight.
I like how the Jackal's able to rip Spider-Man's costume.
Yeah,
Well, he's got claws, right?
Yeah, but like we said, like it's kind of a rare thing to see the Spider-Man costume get ripped up, so
Right.
it's pretty.
no, Nick, he doesn't have claws. The Jackal has shiny claws, as he
Yes,
says.
specifically.
Oh, yeah.
to Spider-Man.
Shiny claws.
And
He
I'm trying
drops
to
a
find.
table on him.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's right after this. Yeah, so he explains that he thinks that Spider-Man was killed by Gwen. I mean, vice versa. Gwen was killed by Spider-Man,
Mhm.
and then
I mean, Gwen was killed by Spider-Man. He admitted it.
yeah, sort of. And then he explains this whole Anthony Serba thing. He murdered the dude.
So what's funny
Well,
is Miles Warren.
says-
If anyone here's a Seinfeld fan, there's the moment where like George has the epiphany on the docks by the beach. Miles Warren, 20 years before Seinfeld, has that same moment while he's on the docks there looking over with the newspaper in his hand. I just thought that was really funny.
What's interesting is that he says that the Jackal murders Serba,
yeah,
not Warren. So I don't know.
yeah. He
Right,
basically
because
he's got this multiple identities thing going on.
Yeah.
Which again, I mean, it's like the Green Goblin.
Yep.
And we get some of his explanation of like why Gwen specifically.
Because he's a
And-
creep.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
Creep.
he's a creep no matter what. But like within this story,
It's not
they
like
kind of play it off as like this like he was into her as like a father figure thing.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
Which I mean,
Right.
potentially that makes it even weirder. But like as we move on, his like obsession with Gwen is going to get weirder and weirder.
By the way, he stuffs the dead body. It's implied that he stuffs the dead body of Anthony Serba into a fucking incinerator.
Which we'll get back
I'll
to.
come back.
But I like I mean, it's kind of risque, these like few panels where like he helps naked Gwen out of her like little cloning chamber. And he's
It's
like,
weird.
hey, let me hypnotize you now.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he's pretty creepy.
creepy.
And then he just kind of leaves and he's like, "Meet me tonight at midnight, and we'll have our final fight."
Wait.
Between
Go
you and
to
your hidden self.
Yeah.
go to the page right after. So like that page where she's like standing up fully out of the tube.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Look at his hands. I feel like he's tactically putting his hands in a certain place.
Oh my god.
I think he's maybe covering
Oh.
something.
Oh my god. And he has his hand in her. Oh my god.
He's
No,
holding.
no,
He's
no.
holding her hand. He's holding her
Oh,
hand
yeah,
with
yeah.
his left. He's
Yeah,
holding
I
her
see
hand with
that.
his left. You can't see his right hand.
Oh my god. Wow, that is. Oh, that's creepy.
That's weird.
So we get another bugle scene, which this bugle scene is kind of pointless. Like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
No, just
Uh,
Betty's upset that Ned's missing, and then Peter comes in. And they're like, "Have you seen Ned? Yeah, I've seen Ned."
Haven't seen him in a week.
Yeah,
I
and
haven't
then
seen that in a week.
from Peter's point of view, the point of that was he wanted to talk to MJ, but then it's like, oh, everyone else was there, so I gotta bounce.
And this is a different jacket, right? Has he been wearing a red one yet?
No, this is the
Yeah, I
first,
think this is
the first sign of the red jacket.
now.
So the jacket count is up to
4?
3.
Oh, 3.
3 or 4.
Now the Jackal tells Peter to meet them at S.H.I.E.L.D. Stadium,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
Mike, what is S.H.I.E.L.D. Stadium?
Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D. Stadium was this awfully shitty baseball stadium that was built out by the airport, and the New York Mets played there. S.H.I.E.L.D. Stadium no longer exists. It was replaced a few years ago by Citi Field.
Yeah, it was demolished in I think 2008 or 2009. The Jets also played there for a while. The Jets would have been playing there around this time. They stopped playing there in '83. And interestingly, sort of relevant,
S.H.I.E.L.D. Stadium
not
was
really.
actually a very big place for concerts.
In 1987, at Shea Stadium, Marvel threw a publicity event where they had actors dressed as Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson get married
Huh.
because they had the triple event where Spider-Man and MJ got married in the comic books, in the comic strip, and in real life.
Okay.
So I thought that was somewhat interesting.
finishing up on Shea Stadium real quick. The Beatles famously played one of their very first big concerts there.
For the of us who don't know who the Beatles are,
Yeah.
Who you can explain, or
Should I have to explain who the Beatles were?
I mean,
They were
I'll
just
look it up
some
later.
band.
There was some band, and then also a very big professional wrestling destination back in the 60s and 70s.
And an insect, and a Zelda character.
So yeah, Shea Stadium had a lot of history as a entertainment
And a
ground.
Spider-Man villain.
That's true.
So then
Bring it back.
there's a clone here. Also, I love how the Jackal he's poking out of the exit thing, and he's like looking up at Peter. That panel is hilarious.
Yeah, shouldn't his spider sense maybe? I guess it kind of looks like it goes off.
I mean, I guess it's still Miles Warren, so some
But
bullshit.
at that point, it should know. I don't know how it works.
So
He knocks him out again.
so there's a clone.
Yeah, again. Is that twice in this one issue?
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
And this clone, he's got the same memories as Peter, so it's like, oh, I'm the real one. I'm the real one. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Other thing, on the cover of this issue, the blue on the two clones are on Peter and his clone are slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I see
And you
that.
can like kind of tell them apart. But in this issue, like you definitely can't tell who's the clone, right?
Actually, no, you
visually?
can't. I just realized it. I read it. The clone has the web. The clone has the web pits.
They
The
both
regular
have web
No,
pits.
No, they both have web
they
pages.
both do in the first panel.
Yeah, the
Okay.
second panel's kind of messed up.
Yeah, they don't have it really at all past the first panel, past the first and second. And so the Jackal has Ned Leeds tied up to a bomb, and somehow only if the right one like tries to disarm the bomb, he'll survive.
How would that work? Because they both be identical, right?
Yeah, that doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
I don't.
The
Magic.
other thing is, I love how the Jackal says he removed some of Peter Parker's RNA, his memory cells, to ensure
Yeah, that's not how.
that the other Spider-Man would have the same memories.
That's just bullshit.
Yeah, it's clear Conway does not know how cloning works. He does not know what RNA is. It's fine. It's okay.
And I like
We'll
how
retcon it later, and it's dumb.
I like how we get a moment where the clone. I mean, should we call him Ben Riley at this point? I feel like let's just call him the clone for now.
The
We
clone.
shouldn't. We shouldn't.
So I like how the clone for right at the end they're like, oh wait, we should kind of work together.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But then ultimately, what stops Ned Leeds from dying, sort of, is Gwen's hypnosis runs out.
Mhm.
Very convenient timing. And she rips off the Jackal's mask, which has him it fucks with his split personalities thing.
Yeah. He says, "I killed Anthony Serba, not the Jackal."
He puts his hand on his face like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, and he goes, "A murderer."
So he saves Ned Leeds, and then Peter and the clone both try and catch him, which I think that's funny.
Yeah.
I like the idea of like they both grabbed him and it was almost like a hug. And then we see an explosion kill the Jackal.
And he never comes back.
Ever.
Some rubble falls down, and we see someone dressed as Spider-Man under the rubble.
And
Yeah.
he's dead. He never comes back.
Oh.
And then this epilogue is
Or before the epilogue.
actually there are two epilogues.
Okay.
Yes, epilogue 1 and epilogue 2.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Even before this, we see. Peter says far out.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. So
Yeah.
probably, yeah, like an
And-
indicator that that's the real Spider-Man because of MJ. But
Yeah, that was my take. Was that he said simple. That he said far out.
So there's a tiny bit of like ambiguity of whether the real one survived.
Right.
But we'll get to that in a minute. So then, epilogue 1, Gwen visits her own grave, and then she bounces. She's like,
She pulls
this
like
is-
she pulls the intro from the Incredible Hulk TV show where she visits her own grave, looks at it, and then leaves.
And Peter
Yeah.
sheds a tear.
A single
She's like-
solitary tear.
she's like, this is really weird, so I'm just gonna leave and never come back.
Yep.
That's my question. Was nothing ever done with the clone of Gwen?
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Things have been done. She is dead now though, but I don't think she died during the Clone Saga, so I think we might actually miss her death.
Did
Or
she
no,
die during the
She
carrying
dies
stuff?
No, she dies in Spider Island, which I think we
Wow.
are actually reading, but I'm not sure if we're reading the exact issue she dies because it's like a tie-in.
Okay.
That's
Um,
weird.
We'll address that when we get to it someday.
Yeah.
But also
Stay
her name is
tuned.
not Gwen Stacy. I'm pretty sure it's Joyce Delaney. That's the name she takes on.
Oh yeah, that sounds kind of familiar.
Maybe.
And so epilogue 2, Peter comes back to his apartment, and what happens in this final panel?
Smash.
Oh, they have sex.
Click. Another click.
Also, MJ has some pretty risque tops. Like this one, literally, it's like very very close to just being a brawl.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Since Peter has no furniture, I guess they're just
On the
right on
ground.
Right on the floor.
They have
on
the
that
bathtub.
hardwood floor. That's got to be comfortable.
Or like
Here's the
against the wall.
Yeah.
Probably both. On the ceiling, he's Spider-Man.
She doesn't know yet, or does she?
Well, she does
Know
know.
that
Or
yet?
does she?
They can't try that yet.
Soundwaves are in that yet.
Saw the book.
So then we get into 150.
150.
At this
So
point, Conway's off the book.
yeah,
Yeah, now Archie Goodwin's
Archie
writing.
Goodwin here.
Just this one issue though, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So,
Which
first repeat.
I didn't realize it was Artie Goodwin. I had assumed it was Len Wein, but it's Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So big anniversary issue. I like how Spider-Man is like, oh yeah, I just fucked MJ, but as soon as she leaves, I got to go back into my existential like
Yep.
breakdown. And like, what does
Also,
he do
wait,
here?
no, we can.
Hmm?
Wait, is the opening in is that his apartment or is that Connor's office?
It's his apartment.
This is
That's
yeah.
Wait, so he got furniture?
That answers the question.
When did that happen though?
What?
Well,
Oh,
doors
wait.
just open. Could have had it delivered.
In the last issue, he definitely didn't, right? Or did at least
I
148?
don't know.
Maybe that extra furniture Aunt May had got over there.
And he just tosses books on the ground.
Yep.
And if you look very closely, we can see what some of these books are. He's got a biochemistry book, college calculus, and something that just says like background.
He has a biochem book, but he hasn't read it because he's still in that class.
He's just wow.
So yeah, he's running to. I don't think it does. Yeah, he's going to Dr. Connor's lab, and they kind of don't address that giant size issue we were talking about earlier. They kind of just
That-
gloss over that.
And that was in Florida, wasn't it? Is
Yeah.
Kurt
Well-
not living in Florida at this point? What's
I don't really know because I thought no, he doesn't mention Florida.
He was there for a conference. No, he said he was getting back from Florida.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, the conference.
Yeah.
He's going to the conference though.
Okay.
But at one point, Spidey says his setup could make Chad Everett insecure. Chad Everett is an actor who starred in the CBS drama Medical Center from 1969 to 1976. So another topical media reference.
Wow,
Why wouldn't he just go
wow,
with
that
like
is hot
Megan
right there.
Richards?
Holy shit!
And so then we get like, I like this like this like full length panel where it's like, oh yeah, Kurt Connors is doing every test ever.
Yep.
And
Well,
Kurt's like,
I
all
mentioned
right.
the Incredible Hulk intro sequence earlier with Gwen at the grave, but this time Spider-Man goes under the equipment stuff from the Incredible Hulk TV show intro.
And then Spidey's like, all right, I'm going to take a nap real quick. And
Fights the Vulture.
then, yeah, it's an anniversary issue, so we got to have a Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
Right. He fights everyone.
He fights the Vulture. He fights Sandman.
And they all explode.
He fights Kingpin.
Yep.
They make a point to put out the Sandman's original shirt. Was he wearing something else?
Yeah, like his last appearance before this, because he doesn't appear here. It was in a Fantastic Four issue.
With a
And he
Frightful
had, like,
Four.
Yeah, so that's the thing is he was also a member of the Frightful Four, who were Fantastic Four villains, and he had like some like kind of like tech suit.
He had
that
a
I guess
really-
helped contain him.
He had a really ugly costume.
Yeah, it looks pretty dumb.
How many off is Sandman from becoming an Avenger here?
Like 20 years.
Long time.
Maybe like
Oh my God.
Yeah, like very early 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so actually, yeah, pretty much. And so they were all illusion. Well, they were like dissolvable robots. And I've never found this guy interesting ever.
Smythe?
Yeah.
No, he sucks.
He wasn't even interesting in the cartoons, the 90s cartoon. He was just kind of the lackey to Kingpin.
I don't like him. I don't like Spider Slayers in general. But
Yeah, I don't like
Spider-Man's web fluid runs out because this guy's important enough. Like they had to nerf Spider-Man somehow to make this guy a little bit more of a threat.
Yeah.
basically.
The other thing is, so he thinks this is all a nightmare. So he's just like, all right, I'll just go limp and let this guy kill me so I can wake up. And then he starts thinking of MJ, and he's like, oh, wait, I actually care about MJ, therefore I'm not a clone.
Right.
Which, that's kind of, I mean, I sort of understand it. Like, it sort of makes sense, but not
It
really.
would make sense because the clone would be programmed to love Gwen.
Well, it's not even
Yes.
programmed. The clone wouldn't have developed
Oh,
a strong attraction to MJ yet.
That
yeah.
emotion, that emotional response. And I mean, it's also the first of many times that Peter Parker will break out of some sort of trap because he loves MJ.
Yeah.
I think this is the first time. I think maybe most famously done in Kraven's Last Hunt. But this is the first time he does that, and I like it.
I like when he rips the cockpit off of Smythe's robot. I like how Smythe looks like he's waving. He's like, hey.
Also,
you got me.
I guess with an almost final moment of Spider-Man being a dick, he takes that hard report that Connor spent all night working on and rips it up and throws it off a building.
That has always bothered me. Connors is there. He's clearly exhausted. He's passed out at the desk. He worked himself to unconsciousness, and he goes, eh.
He's not even here to do this. He's here for like 2 days to do like a conference meeting.
Right.
He's gone out of his way to help Peter here.
All right, so here's the thing. He doesn't look at the report at all, and we talked about he thinks he's definitely not the clone because of how he feels about MJ, but this is definitely somewhat ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which opens the opportunity for the first half of the Clone Saga, which obviously we're going to get to.
Yeah.
Well,
I
And
can't wait.
wouldn't Connors have seen the report though? So shouldn't he know?
yeah, I mean that's the thing. We'll have to see
Yeah, I don't know. if that
in the
comes
next
to
few
that.
episodes whether he goes and talks to him.
Does he?
I don't remember.
Watch me like, I didn't look at it. It's for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
How would it? Wouldn't he?
no, he should have just forgot.
He's
Like,
holding a
Connor,
pen, I guess.
Connor should have just been like, I don't remember.
He's a 50-50. He could have just been like, yeah, nah.
Nick, it's a give and take.
It's
a give and take.
So as you would expect, Conway, that ambiguity. Well, Conway doesn't even write this, but earlier on, there's some ambiguity when he says goodbye to the Gwen clone as well.
Yeah.
And so Conway has said that the ambiguity was totally unintentional, and he would never in a million years think that they would try and replace Spider-Man.
Oh,
Whoops.
go on him.
I don't believe him. I don't believe him.
So then moving into 151, Matt, you want to hold up your book real quick? This is an iconic cover.
It's a great cover.
But we are only discussing 3 pages of it real
Yeah.
quickly.
Okay, well then.
So he's got a little bag with the body, which again, this is some seedy stuff from Spider-Man. And he burns the body.
Yep.
And right before, like, he sets the body down and his spider sense just goes off. I don't know what that's.
There's also some argument about that. So who's the Matt? What happens in the rest of that issue?
I read it. It's just there's a blackout in the city caused by the Shocker because he's trying to like spell out his name.
He spells out his name in lights. It's the blackout area. It's awesome. Here.
And his web fluid runs out again because that has to happen 2 issues in a row.
Yep.
So
and he goes
into the Shocker. Yeah.
He goes in the sewers. He fights the Shocker.
Another jacket.
And he gets like stuck in the sewer at the end. It's like
cliffhanger. The question is, the spider sense, there's 3 possibilities. It's not really 3 possibilities. There's 3 ways you can look at it and bullshit it. Is it just for that story with the Shocker? Is it Ben Reilly being alive or whatever? And the third option is I think it is
in the background.
I think it's actually revealed what that spider sense was, but like an issue later. I think it's Harry Osborn for some reason.
Oh really?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Whatever.
By the way, Vince, Peter Parker in this issue has a shirt stolen directly from your wardrobe.
Oh yeah, and as he's like he has like his fancy clothes on, and as he's swinging away on a helicopter, he just throws off all his like fancy clothes, and he's like, "Oh, I'm never getting those back."
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't matter for him. He's just going to steal more.
Apparently.
Yeah. So also in those, I think it's in those 3 pages, or no, it was in 150. I forgot to mention. There's also a reference to Weight Watchers, which was founded in 1963 in Queens. And I'm not totally sure when Weight Watchers like went wide, like when it became a national thing. So that may have been like a regional reference. I'd have to figure out that timeline.
Weight Watchers was a big notoriety thing until like early 2000s.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the quick behind the scenes thing. Here's the thing: is I couldn't find much definitive stuff on like the rotating chairs, but for the first few issues of this run, Len Wein is the editor-in-chief of Marvel, but Roy Thomas stayed as the editor for Spider-Man. And then we move into Marv Wolfman becoming the editor-in-chief and Len Wein editing Spider-Man. So like he's like stepped down, and then with 151, Len Wein begins writing Spider-Man. And what really throws this off and questions like Conway leaving, and you mentioned his DC work, which I don't know how that factors into this, because pretty much around this time is when Jerry Conway would have had his like 2 to 3 month editor-in-chiefship himself. So I don't know how that factors into it. Like, did he have to leave Spider-Man because he became editor-in-chief, and then that just didn't work out, so he couldn't come back to Spider-Man? So I don't actually really have strong answers as far as the exact timeline of those like the switch ups. But the other thing is that so initially so Conway was told to bring back Gwen.
Right.
Because I talked last time how Stan Lee was basically like absent-minded / out of the office when they killed Gwen.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, as you would expect, a lot of fans got really mad, and there were lots of letters saying like, "Screw you for killing Gwen. You got to bring Gwen back somehow." Blah blah blah. And apparently, Stan Lee, he just came to a point where that feedback, like he was taking it seriously, and he was like, "Yeah, we need to bring Gwen back somehow." And so initially, and I think the like first like 2 appearances of her in this run, like you can kind of see where they were going with that. Like it may have even still been the clone thing, but you could see how it possibly could have been like a permanent thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think basically Stan either was convinced otherwise or he just stopped caring, and Conway transitioned it into this whole clone story. And so some people question whether 149 being Conway's last issue, not the issue specifically, but some people question whether the entire thing of bringing Gwen back and then what it evolved into was what pushed Conway away, and maybe he quit the title over having to bring back Gwen and then having to fix things.
I mean, that's been my own theory because, dead meant dead at Marvel, and I think Conway was a big proponent of that idea, and he didn't want to bring Gwen back, but I don't know, I don't know if that's necessarily true or not.
Yeah, and then I think about like a full 15 years after this, maybe 12 or 10 to 12 years after this, Conway would come back and he'd have runs on both Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man. And I know Matt, you've read some of that stuff. That's like the Tombstone stuff.
Right.
And then I don't think Conway ever touched Amazing Spider-Man again, except for he did like some like point issues, like a point miniseries, like very recently, like or in the Slott era.
Yeah, just like a year or two ago, I read that. It was.
And so I was watching Ethan Van Sciver, who's like a big like Green Lantern and Flash artist. He does these like creator interviews sometimes on a YouTube channel, and he was talking to Dan Slott, and what Slott told him was, and this is timely as well considering the recent news with Dan Slott, where Slott says like obviously he had tracked down or met and talked to a lot of the previous Spider-Man writers about their experience with the character and everything, and apparently. I mean, obviously, he's probably embellishing this to a certain extent to make the story dramatic, but apparently, all of these Spider-Man writers basically told Dan Slott, "Stay on it as long as you can because you can never come back."
Mm-hmm.
So, little thing
That's
there.
weird considering that Conway has been back to do like Venom, and then like Renew Your Vows.
Yeah. Well, I think he was specifically also talking about Amazing Spider-Man, which even for Conway, that's valid. I think the only person besides Stan Lee had that kind of weird thing where he like stopped his run and then there was Roy Thomas fill-in and then he came back and then he left.
Yeah, he did it with FF too.
Yeah, I think that really the only writer to return to Amazing Spider-Man is Tom DeFalco. I'm pretty sure. Because he had his run right after Roger Stern where he did the symbiote stuff, and then he came back later, and we'll see some of that, I believe, in the 90s Clone Saga.
That's just kind of crazy to think that the character's been around as long. Like, there's only there's been no like real repeat writers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, and then you could get iffy with like Dan Slott since he came from the Brand New Day era as a rotating writer. But I wouldn't count that.
I wouldn't count that. He's always in the fold. He was he was never gone.
Yeah, but so like we said, this is the end of Conway's run. Our previous episode was part of Conway's run, not the very beginning though. I think it's kind of interesting that I would say, I mean, there's the Punisher in the middle, which had a huge impact, but Conway's two most impactful stories are about Gwen Stacy, which is kind of funny considering the motivation of the first one and then some major moments in this story where ultimately one of Conway's goals was to leave Gwen behind and develop MJ.
And I think he ultimately does lay the groundwork for that.
Yeah. But Matt, you're a really big fan of this overall run by Jerry Conway.
Yeah.
You want to talk real quick about just kind of the run as a whole?
I think that he takes a lot of what Stan Lee built and he brings it in a slightly different direction. That I think he has a very interesting voice for Peter that I really, I don't know, kind of bonded with. I mean, I'm part of it. Granted that I grew up with this stuff. This is my Spider-Man. But yeah, yeah. I think he does something slightly different than what Stan Lee does, and I think it really works.
All right. Does anyone have any final thoughts on this story? This chunk that we read.
Overall, like, I was kind of like coming in before we recorded. I was like, man, I really didn't enjoy this as much as I like. That was my attitude. But like after discussing it, really, the only things I really didn't like was the Paris stuff.
Mhm.
Overall, I like this. It was fun, and it's fun, well written comics. So I would change my stance coming into it. I solidly enjoyed it, except for that one little step in Paris.
Yeah, the Paris stuff is kind of a slog, but right in there's also the airport scene, which is I think the best part of the entire story.
Yep.
The clone stuff itself, sort of it all made sense. It was pretty straightforward. So I mean, looking forward to seeing how that changes down the line.
Yeah,
It's gonna get horribly convoluted.
it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps up this. Next episode, we're gonna be talking about another big chunk of issues, and next episode we're gonna be actually jumping around in time a little bit as well.
Mhm.
We're gonna be taking a detour to a bunch of Spectacular Spider-Man issues, and that's going to concern Carrion, who we'll get into in that episode.
He sucks. He does.
But also, we'll see a little bit of Frank Miller drawing Spider-Man and Daredevil.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Hey, Daredevil, Frank Miller. I like those people.
Yeah, and then after that, we're gonna have like a little mini episode where we're gonna do the Clone Saga finally, and like just kind of like the very first episode with the introductions, and then we're gonna actually get into the whole meat of it. Matt, do you have any? Before we get to that, before we close out, do you want to talk any like just real general stuff as far as the Amazing Spider-Man stuff that followed this story that we read?
A lot of it's not terribly notable until Wolfman comes on, in the late 170s, early 180s.
Yeah, something like that.
Not a whole lot happens. Pete almost graduates from college and then doesn't because he forgot to take a PE course.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's real rough. But really not much happens until Black Cat shows up in like 197 or 198, and then Return of the Burglar in 200. Between now and then, it's almost I don't want to say filler, but nothing real significant happens.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing something that I just forgot about, but I don't think anything.
No, not really. I mean, Matt, one of your favorite stories of all time is pretty much right after the original Clone Saga, but otherwise, I would agree this Len Wein era is pretty much it's pretty skippable.
Yeah, I mean, immediately after this, there's the Shocker, a short Shocker story that we touched on, which I think is a lot of fun, if not terribly noteworthy. And then I absolutely love 153. It's just a little one shot with a scientist. He used to be a football player, and his daughter. There's some cute Pete and MJ stuff dancing at a ball of some sort, and it ends on a pretty somber note. And it's one of my favorite Spider-Man stories, and maybe comics in general.
Right. Thanks for tuning in, and check out the next episode.
Our sponsor this week was this slipper. It's a left slipper, only the left one.
And I guess with that, it is Christmas Eve as we're recording this. So Merry Christmas, everyone. And
if you don't celebrate Christmas,
if we don't do another one before that.
All right, peace.